Hi, my name is Nick. I am 26 years old, and for the first time in my life, I will be reading Insurgent, the second book in the Divergent series. I'm reading the ebook. This is also the second book in a young adult novel that I have not read at all. Please, I beg you, just pretend this is Insurgent by Veronica Roth. This is the second book that I am reviewing in a series of me reading all of the Divergent books. I'm also watching and reviewing all of the movies that they made based off of the Divergent books. So at the time of watching this, I have a video out about Divergent the book and the movie and how it compares to the book. My Divergent video ended up being 3 hours long. It's the longest video I ever made, and it very surprisingly had a lot of people who were really into the video and who loved it. So thank you for watching if you did. I loved hearing all your guys' feedback, and these are my favorite videos that I make, so I am very excited to jump into this with you guys. Of course, it would help to have context if you watch my 3-hour video on Divergent, but that's not necessary if you want to watch this video. If you already watched my last video, I have timestamps on this video so you can cut right to me talking about the book, but I'll fill in people who are new and who are scared and have no idea what's going on. I started reading a little bit over a year ago. I decided to start the Divergent series because I had heard so much about it. I loved reading as a kid, but I stopped doing it when I grew up, and so it's been about a year now that I have considered myself a reader. Off the top of my head, I'm going to try to give you a quick synopsis of what Divergent is. It is a young adult dystopian novel that takes place in Chicago, and the main character of our book is a girl named Beatrice. You grow up in one of 5 factions, and then when you turn 16, you decide if you want to stay in your faction or go to different factions. Beatrice grows up in abnegation. It's the most boring, lifeless faction. They're all about being very selfless. They wear gray clothes all the time. But then you have 4 other factions. Candor, they're all about being very, very honest all the time. You've got erudite, they're all about knowledge. You have amity, they're all about being loving and nice to each other. And then you have dauntless, they're all about being courageous and scary, and they're like badasses. Tris takes an aptitude test at the beginning of Divergent that tells her which faction to go to. Her test results were inconclusive and gave her 3 different factions to join, which is a very rare thing called divergent. It makes you a divergent. You have divergence. And this book is about Tris joining Dauntless, the scariest faction, and trying to make it through initiation while we learn how brutal this whole system is. During the book, she makes new friends, and her older 18-year-old trainer, 4, they end up having a big romantic arc. The whole book is just them gooning over each other. It's nothing new. 4's cold hand clamps around one of my hips, one of his fingers finding a strip of bare skin just on my back and guides me through the dormitory. I feel his finger watch the muscles in his back expand and contract until I fall asleep. Opens and he walks in, a towel in hand, and his fingers slip down my spine and a shiver follows them down to the small of my back. He unzips my jacket a few inches. Part of initiation is being able to complete all of these simulations of your worst fears. If you are divergent, you're able to control those simulations, and that's what makes you special, I guess. Anyways, we find out in the first book that the erudite faction representative, Jeanine Matthews, is actually planning on taking over the government, which is headed by the abnegation. At the end of the book, erudite mind controls all of the dauntless in order to kill a bunch of the government leaders and start a revolution. Beatrice, or Tris as we end up calling her, and her boyfriend 4, whose name is actually Tobias, they're both divergent, so they did not get affected by the mind control, and they end up taking it down. A bunch of people die also, by the way. Tris's parents died. She shot one of her best friends, Will. At the end of the book, Tris and 4 are able to turn off the simulations and save a bunch of lives. But unfortunately, a lot of people died, a lot of destruction happened, and the city is more torn apart than it's ever been. There is still a fight by the erudite to take over the government, and so at the start of our book, Tris and 4 and the rest of the gang are trying to figure out what's next and how they can fix this mess. The book ended in a way that it felt very unfinished and was obviously setting up for the sequel to come out. And so this book picks up exactly where it left off. I think that's everything I have to say. And also, it's Nick from the future. I wanted to ask you guys a favor. If you like this video or you like this format of video or what I'm doing right now, actually hit the like button. Take a second and go down there and hit the button. Maybe even comment if you have feelings about the video. But if you engage with the video in that way, it helps me know what people like to see. And if you don't like what you're seeing, then comment it down below and tell me what I could change to make it better. Okay, that's it. All right, this is going to be for the first section that I've read of Divergent, chapter 1 through 10. The book starts right where it left off. Our main character, Tris, her brother, Caleb, her boyfriend, Tobias's dad, Marcus, and Triss's bully Peter are sneaking through the city gates that allow the Amity trucks to deliver food from outside of the city and bring it in to feed their citizens. We learn that our gang is going to the Amity headquarters, which we have not been to yet in this series. I have always talked about how I think Amity is by far the best faction. They're the only ones that seem to play music, that seem to laugh and have fun. They don't seem to have a bad initiation. I don't think they kick members out very often. This is all to my knowledge. Of course, this book is always going to be throwing hidden corrupt figures at us, and I assume that Amity is not as great as they make it out to seem, but I'm still an Amity head over anything else. I took a quiz in the last book and they told me I was Candor, which is fine, but I'm an Amity guy through and through. As they walk towards Amity headquarters, Triss talks about how much of a little pussy her brother is because he just keeps crying. The dauntless people are strong-willed. They don't cry. They don't show emotion. So Triss and Four are just carrying on. But Caleb went to erudite. I don't know if you guys remember. And so he was kind of just like a nerd, and they paint him out to be a dork, even more so in this book. On page 3, Triss says that Caleb wipes his cheeks every few seconds, and I know he's crying, but I don't know how to comfort him or why I'm not crying myself. Triss always had these moments in the last book where she's like, I don't know why I'm just like not as weak as these other people. They all seem to be struggling, but to me, I'm just trudging through. It's the good, same old Triss. Anyways, our group approaches Amity headquarters, which they make out to be the coolest place ever, even when they just describe the way it looks. Abnegation is just a bunch of the same gray buildings. Dauntless, they literally live inside of a pit, but with Amity, they talk about how their headquarters is a cluster of wooden and glass buildings. To get into the headquarters, you have to walk through an orchard, and there are branches that grow into one another that form a big tunnel, and there's fruit hanging from the top. It just sounds like the chillest place. As they're walking through the building, Triss points out how she can hear laughter through an open window, which this is like just hours after a horrible mass murder has taken place and has begun a civil war between all of the factions. But Amity is just that happy that a mass murder is not going to stop them from just loving life and chilling out and just hanging out, guys. Well, why is everyone so serious? Triss says, I would be shocked by the lack of security if we were not at Amity headquarters. They often straddle the line between trust and stupidity. Then we meet the representative for Amity for the first time. Her name is Johanna Reyes. Triss says on page 5, I recognize Johanna because it's hard to forget her face. Whether you've seen her once or 1,000 times, a scar stretches in a thick line from just above her right eyebrow to her lip, rendering her blind in one eye and giving her a lisp when she talks. She would have been a beautiful woman if not for that scar. And despite the horrors that Triss and her group have to go to, Johanna tells them, I can grant you all permission to stay the night, but tomorrow our community must decide together. Johanna also tells them that if they want to come into the faction, they have to give over all their weapons, and everyone in their group gives their weapons, but Tobias hints at Triss that she should hold on to her weapon, and for some reason they don't check any of them. I guess it's that easy to get away with breaking security measures at the Amity compound. And Veronica Roth's writing is very heavy-handed when it comes to setting up the foreshadowing of future events. And I say that because we have this line on page 7 where Johanna says, welcome to the Amity compound. Johanna's eyes fix on my face, and then she smiles crookedly. Let us take care of you. And to me, that immediately gives me a feeling that something's off, that Johanna is not all that she seems. Amity gives them this like futuristic medicine that erudite developed that helps speed up their healing. It says that an Amity nurse gives me a salve developed by erudite to speed healing to put on my shoulder. And this constantly happens in the book. They're like, hey, take this. It's like medicine, but it works faster because this is the future. And we are definitely more technologically advanced than we would have been in a normal world. One of the abnegation puts a cup of steaming liquid under my nose and says, drink this. It will help you sleep as it helped some of the others sleep. No dreams. So they developed a magic liquid IV that not only puts you to sleep, but it also kills your dreams. She probably just gave her like a THC CBD hybrid gummy. So the medicine knocks her out, and at the start of chapter 2, she wakes up in a random bed at Amity headquarters, and she reaches behind her, and she still can tell that she has the gun with her. I don't know how the Amity did not find her gun when they carried her to bed to go to sleep, but she's still got it, so don't worry about that. And now we're seeing how Triss is reacting internally to her killing one of her best friends, Will, at the end of the last book, who is the boyfriend of one of her best friends, Christina. At the end of the last book, Will was under the mind control of the erudite and was going to shoot at Triss if she didn't take him out first. Unfortunately, she didn't shoot him in the leg, didn't shoot him in the hand, she just shot him in the head. And she didn't know, we don't have a reason why, she just did it. On page 9, Triss says, his hand. I could have shot his hand. Why didn't I? Why? So she's been having these visions, these little freakouts about how she killed Will, and she hasn't told anybody yet. She hasn't even told Four yet. Four being Tobias. We're going to call him Tobias. We're going to call him Tobias in this book. She wakes up, she shoves her gun underneath her mattress to hide it even better than she was hiding it before, which is still not good. And she also talks about the hard drive that she stole at the end of the last book in order to stop Erudite from mind controlling all of the Dauntless. And she says, the corner of the hard drive peeks out from under my pillow where I shoved it right before I fell asleep. There are no better hiding spots that you could find for the most important thing that you need to take care of and hide from everybody else. And finally, on page 10, we begin our first gooning section of the book. If you don't remember in Divergent, most of that book was just Triss gooning over Four and talking about how sexy he is. Most of Divergent is just a teenage girl having a crush for the first time. Tobias knocks on Triss's door and he comes into the room and it says he wears the same jeans as yesterday, but a dark red shirt instead of his black one, probably borrowed from one of the Amity. When he leans his head back against the doorframe, I see that it makes the blue in his eyes lighter. So far pretty passive, but it's the gooning will commence, okay? It's coming. Tobias unscrews the cap of a small bottle and holds out a dropper filled with clear liquid. Pain medicine. Take a dropper full every 6 hours. So they've got all this magic medicine for other stuff that does everything really quickly, but then the pain medicine, it's the same as like Tylenol. You just take it every 6 hours and then it's fine. But maybe the pain relief is just better. I don't know why the technology is not advanced when it comes to just specifically that medicine. Tobias asks Triss how she's doing and she starts thinking about Will again and internally says, I haven't told him about Will yet. I want to, but I don't know how. Then she finally says to Four, I'm ... I shake my head a few times. I don't know, Four. I'm awake. This is the first I we have in the book. Of course, it's an ellipses after the I. It's not a hyphen, but I'm gonna take it anyways. Then we have more gooning. Tobias slides his hand over my cheek, one finger anchored behind my ear. Then he tilts his head down and kisses me, sending a warm ache through my body. A warm ache? Sounds gross. Triss doesn't feel like Tobias could possibly relate to her when it comes to losing a family member. But then she says, Tobias lost his mother when he was young. I don't remember how she died, just that we attended her funeral. Suddenly, I remember Tobias clutching the curtains in his living room, about 9 years old, wearing gray, his dark eyes shut. The image is fleeting, and it could be my imagination, not a memory. And I'd like to think that it's an imagination because she never mentioned in the first book how she did have interactions with Tobias when she was younger, I guess. I knew that they both grew up in abnegation together, but the fact that she didn't recognize or know anything about Tobias in the last book when she learned that he was Marcus's son, I feel like the first book led us to believe that they never interacted when they were kids, but suddenly she has a memory of young Tobias at his mother's funeral. You guys remember Susan from the last book, the classic character Susan? Susan is one of the abnegation girls that was in the last book. Triss and Caleb grew up with her and supposedly her and Caleb were supposed to like get married and stuff. Susan is an example of one of the abnegation who just stayed with abnegation during the choosing ceremony. Susan wasn't in the last book that much, but in this book, of course, abnegation had to flee their homes after they were mass murdered. So she probably just lost a lot of important people to her in her life. And now she's coming into Triss's room to ask if she can help Triss with anything, maybe do her hair for her. And as Susan is doing Triss's hair, she says, "It's a shame this happened when it did. Our leaders were about to do something wonderful." Triss responds and says, "Really? What?" And Susan says, "I don't know. I just knew that something was happening. I didn't mean to be curious. I just noticed things." If you don't remember, being curious is a bad thing if you're in abnegation. You should not ask questions or have any thoughts in your mind that might cause you to be too curious. There was a little quote that stood out to me when I was reading this chapter also that says, I am afraid that if I start to sob, I will never stop until I shrivel up like a raisin. And that was something funny for me to imagine in my head. Tris talks about how nothing is ever going to be the same again without her parents being alive. And so she decides to make a big change, a big cosmetic change, which is that she is cutting her hair to be shorter. I guess you could say that Tris did a thing. Am I right, guys? When Tobias and Caleb come to get me later, they stare at me like I am not the person they knew yesterday. You cut your hair, says Caleb, his eyebrows high. Grabbing hold of facts in the midst of shock is very erudite of him. Sometimes the most normal shit happens and Tris just always attributes it to being part of their faction, as if it's weird for Caleb to see her and note that she cut her hair. That's just so erudite of you, bro. Like, what the hell? You're gonna point out objectively that I cut my hair? What? They turn him into such a loser, and I think it's so funny that Ansel Elgort plays him in the last movie. The casting for the movie was so weird. I have a video that should be out now about what I think about the Divergent movie. I am not gonna let it affect how I see this book, because I think that there's so much they leave out of Divergent that the Insurgent movie will probably be so much different than the book. I've already heard that it gets really crazy. Then Caleb tries to big dog Tobias because, you know, he's the big bro to Tris and he's seeing this older guy go after his teenage sister, but he's a bit of a nerd, so trying to intimidate Thor is not going to work. Sorry, Tobias. I just can't, you know. Sometimes I forget when to change from Thor to Tobias. Caleb says to Tobias, how old are you anyway? Tobias says, 18. And you don't think you're too old to be with my little sister? Tobias lets out a short laugh. She isn't your little anything. And Tris has to break it up and say, stop it, both of you. Boys will be boys, am I right, guys? So then we get to the scene where Amity is actually voting on what they're gonna do with all of these refugees who are now at their compound. Tris says, I learned in faction history that the Amity recognize no official leader. They vote on everything, and the result is usually close to unanimous. They are like many parts of a single mind, and Johanna is their mouthpiece. And so they slowly start to explain how this process works. So Tris says that every Amity in the room turns to the person next to him or her and starts talking. Everybody in the room is talking, and Tris says, how do they get anything done? And Tobias says they don't care about efficiency. They care about agreement. And so what happens is these little groups of people talk, and once they come to a unanimous agreement, then their group will have one person that goes and talks to another group's leader, and then they'll try to find a unanimous agreement to come to, and then the leader of those two bigger groups will talk to those groups, and then finally you'll have a couple people go up to Johanna, and then they will form an agreement with her. Tris thinks it's bizarre, but Tobias says, I think it's beautiful. They each have an equal role in the government, they each feel equally responsible, and it makes them care. It makes them kind. I think that's beautiful. Comrade Tobias, communist king. And Tris, capitalist queen, says, I think it's unsustainable. Sure, it works for the Amity, but what happens when not everyone wants to strum banjos and grow crops? What happens when someone does something terrible and talking about it can't solve the problem? Who cares? Oh my god, you're so annoying, Tris. She always has something to say. Johanna finally tells them, we feel that the only way to preserve our relationships with both factions is to remain impartial and uninvolved. Your presence here, though welcome, complicates that. Now, what do you mean to remain impartial and uninvolved when there is first-hand eyewitness proof that erudite is mind-controlling other factions to mass murder? What are we even talking about? Staying uninvolved. They broke the law. It's part of the faction. What are we even talking about? But Johanna ultimately says, you are welcome to stay here if and only if you can abide by our rules, and that is our decision. The rules are that there are no weapons allowed. If any serious conflict arises, you have to leave. And the third rule is that the conflict is not allowed to be discussed, even privately, within the compound. I understand that they don't want the other army to be going after them and killing all their people, but I also am just like there's a war going on, and you can't just hang out the whole time. I don't know. Anyways, Tris and Tobias do not think it's a good idea to stay at Amity because of these rules. There are a lot more pressing matters, and they aren't just gonna chill out now that erudite has killed so many people close to them. Chapter 3 begins, and Tris starts talking about how her gun is giving her allergic reactions after everything that happened. And, you know, she's got PTSD or whatever. She says that her fingers brush over the trigger of the gun and my throat tightens like I am having an allergic reaction. I withdraw my hand and kneel on the edge of the bed, taking hard swallows of air until the feeling subsides. Tris sees Marcus, who is Tobias's dad, one of the representatives of abnegation, and Johanna Reyes, who is the representative of amity, walking towards the garden, and she decides to stalk them and see what kind of secret stuff they're up to. Divergent loves a good overhearing conversation that explains the plot of the book. She hears Johanna says that she's been confused about the timing of the attack. She's wondering if it was just that Jeanine finally finished planning the attack and acted on it, or if there was an inciting incident that had her speed up the process. And Johanna hints at Marcus that he knows something about the attack that she is not aware of. She says, you do know why she attacked when she did. I may not be Candor anymore, but I can still tell when someone is keeping the truth from me. And Marcus says, inquisitiveness is self-serving, Johanna. This is like every dialogue in the book is like, I might not be this faction, but I sure am honest. I might not be this faction, but I'm sure nice. Fuck it, who cares? You guys suck. Inquisitiveness is self-serving. Buddy, that's not self-serving. She's trying to figure out how to save her faction. If anything, she is being selfless by trying to figure out how to help her own people. But obviously, at the end of the day, that is also including herself, which maybe makes it self-serving. I don't care. Stop trying to mess with my head. Marcus admits that there are things he knows that she is not aware of. He says, there's a reason you don't know all the things I know. A long time ago, the abnegation were entrusted with sensitive information, and Jeanine attacked us to steal that information. And so now we're learning for the first time that maybe there wasn't an attack on abnegation just because they ran the government, but there was something even more secretive that Jeanine needed from the abnegation, and that's why she chose to attack them. Marcus says, this information is far more important than you can imagine. Most of the leaders of this city risked their lives to protect it from Jeanine and died, and I will not jeopardize it now for the sake of sating your selfish curiosity. And then we finally get one of these classic things that Veronica Roth loves doing in her book, where whenever there is a man and a woman, you've got to have to make them potential love interests. There is always romance happening between any notable characters of the book. And she always makes it so obvious from the get-go. So far, she hasn't given us any hints, but then we have this line that says, I've never seen Marcus look so tired or Johanna so angry, but her face softens and she touches Marcus's arm again, this time with a light caress. And then it says a paragraph later that Johanna leans in and kisses Marcus's cheek, then walks to the end of the orchard. And Tris is sitting there wondering, I thought Jeanine attacked the abnegation to seize power, but she attacked them to steal information. Information only they knew. Tris goes back to their rooms and she walks in on Tobias and Caleb kissing each other. No, that's not true. That's not true, and I don't really know why I said that. It was just like the lead up felt like that's what I was gonna say. I push open the door just as Tobias, who's sitting on the floor with one leg stretched out, hurls a butter knife at the opposite wall. It sticks, handle out, from a large hunk of cheese they position on top of the dresser. Caleb, standing beside him, stares in disbelief, first at the cheese and then at me. Tell me he's some kind of dauntless prodigy, says Caleb. It's like, you're doing tricks on it, dude. The glazing is crazy. First of all, would that not be considered some kind of like violence? What, maybe I'm being a little bit of an abnegation prude here, but I don't know if chucking knives at other things in the room, whatever, I don't care. That's just me being lame. Caleb, being his little erudite, nerdy ass self, says, I'm reading this book about the water filtration systems. The kid who gave it to me looked at me like I was crazy for wanting to read it. I think it's supposed to be a repair manual, but it's fascinating. Sorry, you probably think I'm crazy too. Can you not enjoy knowledge and revel in the beautiful facts of this world without needing to be this like over-exaggerated extreme nerd who reads repair manuals? Fucking loser. I would put his head in a toilet. Dork ass brother finally leaves the room, which means it's time to go to town and goon out with my boyfriend. That sounded kind of weird, like out of context in the video. I feel warm everywhere. He wraps his hand around my hips and presses me gently against the door. His lips find mine. He kisses me again, more insistent this time, his hand squeezing my waist. His breaths, my breaths, his body, my body. We are so close there is no difference. He pulls back just a few centimeters, and I don't know. Tris tries explaining to Tobias that she overheard his dad saying some pretty interesting things that might be important to know about. And Tobias kind of keeps doubling down and says that Marcus is just trying to feel more important than he is. he is an excellent liar and he is just saying this to have leverage against the amity because they think that he's got information that they need. And because Tris doesn't really have any other evidence besides her intuition, she says that she agrees to follow Tobias's plan. Why don't we take a little break from the reading to talk about the sponsor for today's video, our friends at Warby Parker. The year's coming to an end, guys, and 2026 is going to be a big one. And are you going to make the change that is necessary to be the best you can be in 2026? Of course you haven't made the change, but that's where Warby Parker comes in, because I hadn't made my change either until they changed up my whole look with these new Elio frames. Guys, I walked in real life to a Warby Parker store, and their friendly advisor Cole helped me out in trying on all these different frames. I took all these awkward photos of me trying on the frames, and I made a change that has made me so confident because of just how many people have been complimenting me on these nice slick frames. But if you do want to stay at home, they actually have a virtual try-on feature where you can just sit in front of your computer camera and they'll put the glasses on the face for you. They're not even real glasses. They'll put them on your face. Checkout is simple. Free shipping, delivery is quick. The whole process is smooth. Like I said, I ended up going with the Elio frame in black walnut. And what the heck, guys? Look how awesome I look with these. All of Warby's frames are designed in-house with high-quality materials, and they've got so many styles. Whether you want something classic or you want something bold, they're going to help you find the glasses that you need. And listen, these frames and so many other ones start at $95, including prescription lenses with anti-reflective and scratch-resistant coating. And with free shipping, free 30-day returns, and the ability to use insurance and FSA or HSA accounts, I mean, why are we waiting, guys? And what's the cherry on top, guys? What makes this even better is that Warby Parker helps someone get vision care every time you get a pair of glasses with their Buy a Pair, Give a Pair program. Help someone in need get vision care. Choose Warby Parker. So if you want to check out these frames or so many other ones on Warby Parker's website, hit the link in the description or scan the QR code right up here in the top right corner and check out Warby Parker. Thank you to Warby Parker for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to the book. Chapter 4 starts with Caleb and Tris being in the cafeteria. Caleb is just constantly nerding out and being so annoying in this book. It's like every line he has. The chapter starts and he's like, biotechnology has been around for a long time, but it wasn't always very effective. Tris is looking at one of the tables in the cafeteria, and she says that carved into the wood along the table's edge are the letters D and T linked together by a heart. I only point that out because I want to know who D and T are. I feel like it's going to be some like little Easter egg that we're supposed to know. Maybe it stands for dick and taint. Sorry. Caleb talks to Tris about how erudite and amity actually work very close together, and they are known to everybody as essential factions. Tris says that without erudite, we would have inefficient farming, insufficient medical treatments, and no technological advance. It makes me wonder why erudite wouldn't have used their usefulness and what they give to the city as leverage for why they should have more say in the government. They could easily shut down everything by not cooperating with the other factions. They did not need to brainwash a bunch of dauntless to go and kill the government leaders. I think that might have been an extra step too far. Tris hasn't actually told Caleb what she got on the aptitude test. So then Tris finally tells him that she got erudite, abnegation, and dauntless. And he's very surprised. He says 3 factions. It's really difficult for a person to get 2 results. The program actually doesn't allow it. But to get 3, I'm not even sure how that's possible. Tris tells Caleb about Tori, her test administrator from the last book, and how she altered the test. And Caleb says that he wonders how she knew how to do that because it's not something that they're taught. I want to take a quick second to say that my character model for Tori was white in the last book, and then I watched the Divergent movie and they made her into like a hot Asian lady, and I loved that. So Tori's Asian now. I'm keeping in mind though that Tori was not supposed to know how to do that stuff, and she might have more that she is hiding behind the scenes. Another thing that happens in this scene is that Caleb asks Tris if she's gonna eat the toast, and Tris says that the bread tastes strange. Tris says that the large windows beside our table let in so much sunlight I feel like I'm sitting outside. Clusters of amity sit at the other tables, their clothes bright against their tanned skin. It sounds so nice being there. You just get to hang out outside and like everyone's really nice. The girls are probably hot there too, I have to wonder. Tris is now explaining how simulations work to the Divergent when she talks to Caleb, and Caleb asks her, how do you wake up from them? What do you do? And Tris says, I just included that part because that was the second I that we've gotten. And I oop. The abnegation show up along with Susan, and they all sit down with Tris and Caleb, and we have another foreshadowing of romantic tension. It says that Susan and Caleb sit just slightly closer than friends would, though they do not touch. She bobs her head to greet me. Tobias shows up a few minutes later, and he just seems super pissed off. He won't tell Tris why he's pissed off, but he says, if we stay here, I'm gonna punch someone. Marcus shows up, Tobias's dad, and Tris is always pissed off when Marcus is around her. Like, she'll always snap at him and be mean to him on behalf of Tobias. Marcus says hello, and Tris says, what do you want? And then Susan says, Beatrice, there's no need to. And then Caleb goes, Susan, please. Damn, dude. Caleb's like, shut up. Marcus tells them that the other abnegation and himself have discussed it and decided that we should not stay here. We believe that given the inevitability of further conflict in our city, it would be selfish of us to stay here while what remains of our faction is inside that fence. We would like to request that you escort us. So he thinks that going back to the war-torn place that abnegation was, where I assume there's like dead bodies everywhere and everyone's families are like dead amongst the streets, but for some reason they want to go back and like hunker down in abnegation. I'm like, this is not really the best time to do that. Like, you're kind of risking everyone's lives, but whatever. I don't care. I don't even care. Big announcement, guys, I don't care. Tobias doesn't even make eye contact with Marcus, but agrees that in a couple days they will leave with the abnegation to escort them back home. Chapter 5, Tris tells Tobias that she's going to go on a walk and instead stalks his dad. We have all been in those kind of relationships, you guys get it. She sees Marcus walking into the water filtration building that they have at Amity, and she follows him inside. Tris sneaks up on Marcus and confronts him about the secrets that the abnegation has. Tris tells Marcus that maybe her dad didn't die specifically for the information that they're hiding from the erudite, but Tris wants to know if this information is something that her dad risked his life for. And Marcus says yes, it was. Marcus refuses to tell her, and Tris says that she can help him. And Marcus, his upper lip, it curls. He says, you have no idea how ridiculous that sounds. You may have succeeded in shutting down the attack simulation, girl, but it was by luck alone, not skill. Why does he call her girl? Just the word girl. I would die of shock if you managed to do anything useful again for a long time. Tris lets loose on Marcus and says, Tobias is right about you. You're nothing but an arrogant, lying piece of garbage. Tris goes back to the Amity compound, deciding that Marcus is no good for her and his little secrets will stay hidden. Tris has another scary dream about killing Will, and she goes to Tobias's room because she's scared and she needs to go talk to her boyfriend to make her less scared about the guy she killed. Tris says, what would Tobias think of me if he knew what I had done? How would he look at me? And to be honest, like, I don't think Tobias would care that much. Is that crazy of me to say, that Tris protecting herself against one of the brainwashed and accidentally taking out one of the other initiates? Tobias doesn't care about Will. When would he ever care about Will? I know what he wants. He would just want Tris to tell him, and I seriously doubt he would ever care. I don't know why she thinks he would care. I mean, I know it's like a death. Death is big, but like, come on, guys, this is the Dauntless. We do this all the time. But instead, they just goon. You know, when you're hiding something from your boyfriend and you just can't bear to tell him the truth, so you goon instead. Everyone's been there. He kisses me back. His hand starts on my cheek, brushes over to my side, fitting to the bend in my waist, curving over my hip, sliding to my bare leg. I press closer to him and wrap my leg around him. My head buzzes with nervousness. Jesus Christ, these people are horny. Whew. Tris admits to herself that she wants to Tobias. She wants to have sex with him. Tris says that her body pulses to the same rhythm as Tobias, and it all wants the same thing, to escape itself and become a part of him instead. But she says that she can't be with him in that way if one of her reasons for wanting it, sex, is to distract herself from the grief that she has. And I think, like, why not, dude? Like, your parents died, one of your friends died, a bunch of people you grew up with are dead. Have sex. Take it off of your mind for 2 seconds, okay? In chapter 6, Tris goes back to her room to find Peter standing next to her bed. In the last book, anytime Peter showed up, he was about to do something nasty. I'm pretty sure he also, like, sexually assaulted her in the last book. So, but at the end of the book, Triss shot Peter in the arm, and so he's not in his best condition, and he's kind of had to rely on Triss and the rest of the group in order to survive. He says, I'm here because I don't know why you get to keep track of that hard drive. It's not like you're particularly stable these days. Triss thinks that the hard drive is still hidden in her room, but then she says that his eyes shift to the dresser behind her, to the left side, where the hard drive is hidden. I frown at him, then notice something I didn't before. A rectangular bulge in one of his pockets. A rectangular bulge. That's, awfully particular. Anyways, Triss, like, pummels Peter to the ground. He stands up and tries to tackle her. They begin a big kerfuffle in the Amity compound, which we know is against the rules. Tobias and everyone else shows up, and Tobias grabs the hard drive and secures it, and the fight is broken up, and obviously they're going to be in quite a little bit of trouble for this. Triss is grabbed by two Amity men, and as a result is brought to a room called, the conflict room. There's a man on a desk inside the conflict room. They inject her with this serum, and this green serum just starts to make her really happy and like peaceful, and the man says to her, how do you feel? And she says, I feel angry. I was about to say angry with Peter, angry with the Amity, but that's not true, is it? I smile. I feel good. I feel a little like I'm floating or swaying. And she gets all loopy, like after you get your fucking wisdom teeth out. She's talking about how Thor is so handsome and all this stuff. She walks outside. It's like she's tripping on shrooms or something. She's like, the green on the trees seems greener, so potent. Maybe I can taste it. I guess the Amity just like drugging their visitors without their consent. So that's cool. Tobias finds Triss and he says, what did they do to you? You're acting like a lunatic. And Triss says, that's not very nice of you to say. They put me in a good mood, that's all. And now I really want to kiss you. So if you could just relax. Tobias grabs her and carries her to Johanna to talk to her about this. Tobias busts in the door with Triss and says, what did you do to her? What in God's name did you do? And Johanna frowns at him and says, Third eye, that's the third one, okay? Mark it. They must have given her too much. She's very small. They probably didn't take her height and weight into account. Thor asks her what they gave her, and she says, the peace serum. In small doses, it has a mild calming effect and improves the mood. The only side effect is some slight dizziness. And Johanna says to Tobias, but whatever we agreed to do here, we do together as a faction. If I could give the serum to everyone in the city, I would. Which is bad, and Tobias knows that. He says drugging the entire population is definitely the best solution to our problem. Great plan. And then Johanna gets mad and is like, sarcasm is not kind, for everyone's such a loser in this book. It's like, you can't be sarcastic. You're not being mean to someone. You're just whatever. I don't make the rules. If I did, then everyone in this city would have the serum. Am I right, guys? So obviously Amity is becoming a little questionable. Johanna has some very questionable decisions that she makes, or I guess that all of them make, but the way that she talks makes it seem like there is something more evil lurking under the surface, of course. No one should be putting serum into anybody that causes them to do things that they don't want to do. Erudite gives the serum to the dauntless to make them violent. Dauntless gives serum to their own people to make them hallucinate and have simulations about things. Amity has a peace serum. Candor has like a truth serum. Tobias says he's gonna leave, and she says, good. Peace between Amity and Dauntless can only happen when we maintain our distance from each other. Triss and Thor are about to leave when Johanna says, Thor, if you and your friends would like to remain untouched by our serum, you may want to avoid the bread. So when Triss talks about the bread tasting weird earlier or whatever, it's because they also inject it with a serum, and everybody who even eats at the Amity compound is kind of just passively being brain controlled, and maybe Amity is not the best people to be doing this, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, that's kind of insane that everybody is being drugged at Amity, and that probably also affects the decisions that they make. And I think Johanna ultimately, like it said before in the book, is the mouthpiece for these guys. Still, I love Amity. They would be the number one choice for me if I had to pick one. Chapter 7 starts with 5 hours passing and the serum finally wearing off of Triss, and now she is very angry and wants to kill the Amity. And Triss also wonders why she was under control of the serum when all of the other serums so far she has been able to fight as one of the divergent. And Tobias's theory is that because the serum messes with her desires and the things that she wants, she actually enjoys what the serum is doing to her in the moment. And so there isn't any fighting back, I guess. Doesn't really make sense, but whatever. Triss goes outside and notices in the distance that there are a bunch of erudite cars that are driving towards the Amity compound. Triss runs and hides in the trees, but knows that if these people show up and see all of the abnegation and the dauntless who are trying to protect them, then bad things are about to happen. She runs inside and tells everyone in there that the erudite are coming, and Susan is confused about that. She said, "Why do we need to run? The Amity established this place as a safe house." But Marcus says there's no way for Amity to actually enforce those rules because they don't have guns and protection, and they don't believe in conflict. They believe in peace. So how are they going to fight anything off? Triss comes up with an idea and says, disguises. The erudite don't know for sure that we're still here, so we can wear the Amity's clothes and pretend to be Amity. I would think that the erudite leaders and the other dauntless know who Four and Triss are, at least Four, but I guess if you put on a red shirt and cover up your tattoos, no one's gonna know. Tobias says that Triss has a gun and they can actually fight their way out if they need to. I don't know how that's gonna be possible with a single gun that you guys have, and the girl who has the gun gets an allergic reaction every time she touches the gun. She says that she goes under the mattress for the gun and she feels around for a few seconds before she finds it, but when she does, her throat pinches and she can't swallow. I don't want to touch the gun. I don't want to touch it again. But she puts the gun behind her waistband. She grabs the hard drive that I guess she got back from Tobias, and she leaves the room. Triss notes that she can just destroy the hard drive and all of the information on it, but that hard drive also contains the last documentation she has of her parents before they died. She said that the record of her parents' death and the surveillance footage from the attack is the only piece of her parents she has left because the abnegation don't take photos. So she doesn't want to destroy it, but she realizes that her best chance of stopping this from happening again is to destroy it. So she takes a lamp and she fucking breaks the hard drive and destroys it forever. Everybody gets dressed up in the Amity clothes, and then they are called to the dining hall where the erudite and their dauntless guards show up. There are 5 erudite and about 15 dauntless that follow behind them into the building. And Johanna says, our erudite and dauntless friends are looking for some people. Several members of abnegation, 3 members of dauntless, and a former erudite initiate. She is obviously referring to all of the people who are sitting there in front of her. I don't know how they don't have some sort of like documentation or identification or any way to track these people with the technology they have, but I'm not going to ask questions about how any of that came to be because it won't make sense. The dauntless that follow them are all wearing a blue fabric on their arm to signify their allegiance to the erudite. So we're already seeing that after the abnegation attack happened, there were dauntless who ended up siding with the erudite even after being mind controlled. Then you've got the other dauntless who are understandably upset that their representatives fucked them over and allowed erudite to mind control them, and they're trying to fight back. But Johanna lies for them and says that she told them that the people they were looking for were here, but they have since moved on. They have dauntless in the cafeteria who are checking all of the people in there to make sure there's no one hiding. And one of the guards comes up behind Tobias and puts her index finger around the back of his collar, and she sees his neck tattoo, which means that she knows he's a dauntless. The dauntless are the only ones who get tattoos because they're sinful, fucked up people who are going to hell. Anyways, Tobias moves. He grabs the lady's wrist, smacks her head against the table, begins a big firefight between everybody in there. And everyone dives under the tables or they crouch next to the benches. Everyone except me, Triss says. I sit where I was before the gunshot sounded, clutching the edge of the table. She is frozen because of the PTSD after having to kill a bunch of people and watch her friend die and all this stuff. Boring! But she can't move with the gun. Tobias takes the gun from one of the guards and is using the dauntless guard as like a meat shield. And he says, Triss, a little help here? I like that quote. A little help here? Anyone, guys? Anyways, Triss tries to touch the gun, but she freaks out. She can't do it. She's gonna get shot by one of the dauntless guards, but Caleb lunges forward and grabs the gun, and he fires at the knees of a dauntless man in front of him. And then Tobias just fucking shoots him in the head. So that's that. Triss says that she sees a flicker of movement, which they always say about people shooting guns. They're always like, I just see a flash, a little bit of movement, and then the gun fires. I don't know. She's got like spidey senses or something. I don't know. The erudite woman lifts a small gun, points it at a man in a yellow shirt in front of me. Instinct pushes me into a dive. My hands collide with the man, and the bullet hits the wall instead of him. instead of me. I blink a few times to get the blurriness out of my eyes. Peter stares back at me. I just saved his life. He does not thank me, and I don't acknowledge him. Can Peter just get eliminated already? Like, why are we still, like, who cares about that guy? Anyways, everybody makes their escape out of the building. All of the abnegation and our group of characters are running through the cornfields. Everyone splits up in the cornfields, and Triss is seeing gunshots left and right, killing abnegation around her once again. And amongst all of that, she still is gooning. It says that she stares between Tobias's shoulder blades as we run. So freaking sexy, dude. So yeah, basically, like, everybody dies except for all the main characters who have plot armor. They make it to a fence that has this hole in it, and Tobias tells them all to go through it to escape. The only people who make it through are Tobias, Triss, Caleb, and Susan. Susan whispers, "Where are the others?" And Triss says, "Gone." And Susan is not holding it together. She, like, cannot stop sobbing. It's really hard for them to move forward. Susan collapses to the ground and Caleb crouches next to her. Triss says, "I want to feel something. Fear, anger, grief, but I don't. All I feel is the need to keep moving." It's great to have a main character who always says that she's feeling no emotion unless it's like about four, basically. And Tobias kind of snaps at Triss about freezing and says, "You froze. Someone was about to kill you and you just sat there." He's yelling now. "I thought I could rely on you at least to save your own life." And Caleb says, "Hey, give her a break, won't you?" I'm like, dude, I would be mad too. She literally was about to die. She should need someone to smack her out of it. Tobias says to Triss that them two are probably the only ones that the erudite are really after, apart from Marcus, who is most likely dead. And so we leave the chapter with these four characters walking along the train tracks, trying to figure out where to go next, because the new safe house that they were at obviously is overrun and is not a safe place anymore. Might want to call it a dangerous house. Anyways, I originally was going to do chapters 1 through 10, but this took me almost 2 hours to explain just the first 7 chapters. So let's end it there, and I'll be back soon to talk about the next set of chapters. Hey everyone, I'm back, and it's been weeks since I've talked about Insurgents. I'm about halfway through Insurgents now, but I have not been able to sit down and talk about it for a while, so I've got a lot to talk about. So at the start of chapter 8, all of our characters ran away from the erudite trying to murder them. They escape the only way that a dauntless can, by jumping onto a train. And as they're getting ready to go on the plane, it says that Caleb gives Susan step-by-step instructions for getting on a moving train, the way only a former erudite can. How does Caleb even know how to get on a train like that? Step-by-step instructions? Is he reading books about how to get on the train? How many times did he get on the train in the book so far? Is that something I can even fact check? So the gang all hops into the same train car when they suddenly see eyes glitter in the darkness, dark shapes sit in the car, more numerous than we are. The factionless. And they treat the factionless in this book like they're super mysterious and like hiding in the shadows and crevices of our world. And a factionless man with an eye patch has a gun pointed at Tobias. Triss says that the factionless man with the gun looks familiar. Then Triss recognizes him. It's Edward. Remember Edward, guys? Anyone? Hello? Everyone's favorite character, Edward, and Myra, his girlfriend. Edward in the last book was one of the Dauntless initiates. He was like the best fighter out of all of them. But then Peter stabbed him in the eye with a fork because he was intimidated by him. And in the Dauntless initiation, if you stab a person in the head while they're asleep, you can do that, actually. That's allowed. So yeah, Edward had to leave Dauntless, and so now he is among the factionless. And they act like they have not seen him in years, even though I think that the initiation was just a few weeks earlier. But they act like he went missing in the last book, and it's been years, and now that they find him, he's like the leader of all of these factionless. "Hello, Edward," I say. He inclines his head to me, but doesn't lower his gun. Triss? The group asks the factionless if they can ride with them into the city to have protection from the erudite since they're running away. Edward says, "Yeah? What have you ever done for us?" And then Triss is like, "Well, actually, technically, I did help you when no one else would, when that guy stabbed you in the eye, you remember?" And then Edward is like, "Well, yeah, you helped me. But what about all the rest of you?" And then Tobias has a like aura moment where he steps through all of the people and he says, "My name is Tobias Eden. I don't think you want to fuck with me." Everyone's like, what? Oh my God, it's Tobias Eden. Like, that's crazy. That's a name that means something to us. And Edward's like, Eden, really? I have to admit, I did not see that coming. Edward says to Tobias that they know someone who's been looking for him. So they finally get off the train with everyone else. Triss says that her feet slam into the ground and she continues forward. But Susan just falls to the pavement and rolls on her side. Aside from a script knee, though, she seems to be all right. I'm like, dude, you've been Dauntless for like a month. Well, you joined Dauntless a month ago. You've been a Dauntless initiate for like a day, maybe. And Triss doesn't know who this mystery person could be that knows Tobias. She's like, I'm not sure who could know Tobias among the factionless. Maybe it's Drew or Molly. Why would Drew and Molly be looking for him? Like, I don't know. What a dumb guess to make. You don't know everyone in Tobias's life. And then this next scene is funny because they kind of just did this reveal with the train car where Triss goes in and she's like, eyes glitter in the darkness, dark shapes sit in the car, more numerous than we are, the factionless. And then just a few pages later, the factionless lead us to their little headquarters, I guess. She says, we follow Edward into a dank room. In the flickering glow of a lantern, I see people. So we don't need to keep doing this reveal where it's like in the distance, like they come out of the shadows. But something interesting that Triss notices is that we're in a factionless storehouse, and the factionless, who are supposed to be scattered, isolated, and without community, are together inside it. Are together like a faction. And Triss also says she's surprised by how normal they seem. I'm surprised they always act like factionless are like defected or they did something wrong or they're not good enough when they always kick people out of factions for like the dumbest reasons. Like people who are in factionless, if anything, should be more normal because they're rejecting this dumbass system. I would much rather hang out with the factionless people, the neurodivergents maybe. Because they can't focus in school, so then they don't do well on the initiation. I don't know, the connection doesn't make that much sense. And Tobias knows who he's about to meet in the factionless, but he will not tell Triss. And Triss is upset that Tobias is hiding things from her, I guess, hiding, when it's just personal information that he doesn't want to tell his 16-year-old girlfriend right away. Is that crazy? You guys have barely known each other. It's just a trauma bond, guys. It's a goddamn trauma bond, is what it is. How is it I know so little about the boy who says he loves me? The boy whose real name is powerful enough to keep us alive in a train car full of enemies. And they really tried to make Edward suddenly so cool in this book. Like, days have passed and he's got an eye patch and he's got a gun and he like is super rugged. Caleb says, wait, you said they were waiting. What were they waiting for exactly? For? Did someone say for? Huh? What were they waiting for exactly? And Edward looks at him and says, for the world to fall apart. And now it has. Our group gets led through a maze of metal inside of the factionless compound to the back of the room, where several bulbs dangle from the ceiling over a table. Just like they did in the Divergent movie when we were in the abnegation compound, and for some reason Triss's family lives in like a bomb shelter where they have one light bulb. A middle-aged woman stands behind the table. She has curly black hair and olive skin. Her features are stern, so angular they almost make her unattractive, but not quite. Triss, where do you get the credibility to be calling people attractive and unattractive? You can't just be calling the shots all the time. We go through the whole paragraph where Triss was like, oh, I realized that him and the woman look similar. They've got a hooked nose, a little too big on her face. Like, what? Jesus, dude. They also have the same strong jaw, distinct chin, spare upper lip, stick out ears. Are these guys like victims of radioactivity? Why are their facial features so fucked up when Triss is explaining it? Tobias says, Evelyn, his voice shaking a little. Evelyn was the name of Marcus's wife and Tobias's mother. My grip on Tobias's hand loosens. Just days ago, I was remembering her funeral. Her funeral! And now she stands in front of me, her eyes colder than the eyes of any abnegation woman I've ever seen. So Tobias has a mom that we thought was dead and is not dead. And Tobias is also very stern with his mom. Triss wonders why she made Tobias angry. She said, but I can't help but think that if I discovered my mother was alive after thinking she was dead for so long, I would never speak to her the way Tobias speaks to his mother now, no matter what she had done. It's pretty easy to think like, well, maybe she lied about her being dead and told him way later. Maybe that's why he's upset, but maybe that didn't cross her mind yet. So then there's this dialogue between Tobias and his mom, Evelyn, where she doesn't really fully understand why he's upset with her, even though she's kind of like, it's kind of right in front of your face, lady. She says, "I'm not stupid. I know you want nothing to do with me, though I still don't quite understand why." And Tobias says to her, "What makes you think I'm interested in spending time anywhere near you?" he demands. And she just doesn't understand. She's like trying to invite him to become one of the factionless, yada, 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 rada, rada, rada. And he says, "You really don't get it. You don't have the vaguest conception of what you've done to me. I don't want to join up with your little band of factionless. I want to get out of here as quickly as possible." And Evelyn reveals to him that my little band of factionless is twice the size of dauntless. So she says that you would do well to take it seriously. Its actions may determine the future of this city. When Tobias and Triss finally talk, she asks him how long he's known about his mother being alive, and he tells her it's been about a year. I don't know why Triss wonders how big the factionless have gotten. Like, you kick people out every year out of all of the factions, besides, you know, abnegation apparently doesn't really kick people out, because being an abnegation is probably worse than being a factionless. So, but yeah, apparently Evelyn sent a coded message to Tobias about a year ago while he was in Dauntless, and we kind of come to understand that the reason she left is because she had an affair. Apparently Marcus was not any nicer to his mom than he was to Tobias. Tobias said, "She had to leave my father. I get that. But did she think of taking me with her?" And Triss realizes, oh, she left you with him. She left him along with his worst nightmare. No wonder he hates her. Tobias says, "Yeah." He kicks at the floor. She did. In chapter 9, our main characters sit around a fire with the factionless. We have just a little bit of a lore moment. Therese leans over to Triss and tells her that Edward actually used to be erudite first. And she says, "Yeah, I know. I hyphen." I didn't realize there was an I hyphen there. But this is, someone actually cut her off in this case. She interrupts me. "So was I. Had to leave though." And Triss says, "What happened?" And Therese says, "I wasn't smart enough." She shrugs. That's so funny. You decide to transfer to erudite and then you're just like, not smart enough. We also learned from Therese that most of the factionless are from Dauntless, which I think is pretty obvious because Dauntless kicks out a bunch of people during their initiation. They're not shy about kicking out anyone at any time. She also tells us that no one fails abnegation initiation, which I mentioned earlier, but I don't think I showed the quote. No one fails abnegation initiation, so we have very few of those. Triss says, "I guess I shouldn't be surprised about Dauntless." And Therese says, "Well, yeah, you've got one of the worst initiations. And there's the whole old age thing." What? Old age thing? No one told us about the old age thing. Triss says, "Old age thing?" I glance at Tobias. He's listening now. And then she goons about his eyes looking thoughtful in the firelight. Tobias says, "Once the Dauntless reach a certain level of physical deterioration, they are asked to leave in one way or another." And he says, "Let's just say that for some, death is preferable to factionless." So yeah, if you're in Dauntless, once you become too old for them, they're either going to throw you into the abyss or you're going to go make some friends at factionless. Edward says, "Those people are idiots. I'd rather be factionless than Dauntless." And Tobias says, "How fortunate that you ended up where you did then." Fortunate? Edward snorts. "Yeah, I'm so fortunate with my one eye and all." I hate that quote. Put it in writing that I hate this quote. I just sometimes the dialogue feels so clunky and the sarcastic remarks they make feel like an alien came up with them. Someone who does not know how to interact with people. It's like they just watched like sitcoms and that's how everybody talks. And then we get a little bit of a lore drop from the first book where Tobias says, "I seem to recall hearing rumors that you provoked that attack." Triss says, "What are you talking about? He was winning, that's all. And Peter was jealous. So he just ... I see the smirk on Edward's face and stop talking. Maybe I don't know everything about what happened during initiation. "There was an inciting incident," says Edward, "in which Peter did not come out the victor, but it certainly didn't warrant a butter knife to the eye." I don't know what it would have to be for me to look at what happened to Edward getting stabbed with a butter knife in the eye in the middle of the night and needing you and your girlfriend to then leave initiation and go to the factionless forever. By the way, I don't know where Mira is in this book. She is not with the factionless, at least so far. Edward does have such a weird, nefarious vibe in this book compared to the last one. I don't know why we got no personality or anything with his character in the last book. He was just kind of boring. And he was a character that was put in the book in order to have to leave during initiation so Triss and her friends would not get kicked out. Because if Edward didn't get stabbed, then him and his girlfriend wouldn't have left, and then the people that were the lowest you get what I mean. So then we learned from Edward that Dauntless is split in half. Half of them are at Erudite headquarters and half are at Candor headquarters. Somehow we still have half of the Dauntless siding with the Erudite and deciding to stay with them after learning that they were mind controlled. Like Triss says, she feels a little relieved to know that at least half of the Dauntless aren't traitors. But I don't know. That's crazy to me that even 10% of them would be like, oh, I just murdered a bunch of like innocent people and I was forced to do it. Like, well, they got a good idea anyway. They've got the right idea. So I'm going to go with the erudite now. Maybe it's the idea that they're too cowardly and they want to side with the oppressor so that they are on the winning side. That's a little bit too much critical thinking for my brain though. Also, Tobias has an amity tramp stamp. It says when he bends over to untie his shoe, I see the symbol of amity on the small of his back. Veronica Roth has a great writing moment here where Triss is talking about how it's easier for her to fall asleep when there's noise around her. And she says, noise and activity are the refugees of the bereaved and the guilty. Did I say that right? Bereaved? Bereaved. It's like breathed, but breathed. I breathed. Friggin' breathed. And then we have another moment in the book where Triss decides to overhear a conversation between two people. This time it's Tobias and his mom. And they just kind of like explain the plot and use this as a way to spoon feed us information about what's going on with the factionless and Tobias and his mom. And she said that the factionless have the highest divergent population of any group in the city. Triss says she doesn't understand this, but we already know that the factionless are twice as big as the dauntless. And of course, divergent have a harder time fitting into other factions. But basically, Evelyn knows that divergent are more resistant to simulations and they're the best chance of the factionless being able to fight off the erudite from, you know, taking total control of everybody. Evelyn also explains to Tobias that Marcus suspected that Tobias was divergent and he was always watching him, noting his behavior, and he was especially attentive to Tobias for this reason, and that's why Evelyn thought that Tobias would be safer with Marcus. Of course, this is not okay with Tobias, and things definitely were worse because he was left with Marcus. She says that they don't want to be tyrants. They want to establish a new society, one without factions. Triss overhears this and says, my mouth goes dry. No factions? A world in which no one knows who they are or where they fit? I can't even fathom it. I imagine only chaos and isolation. And so Evelyn says to Tobias, and one of my favorite quotes is coming up here. She says, as for why we need you, Evelyn says, in order to do this, we will need Dauntless's help. They have weapons and the combat experience. You could bridge the gap between us and them. And Tobias responds and says, do you think I'm important to the Dauntless? Because I'm not. I'm just someone who isn't afraid of much. He might have well just come out and said, I'm just a guy who only has 4 fears. Evelyn thinks that Tobias should become important among the Dauntless and lead them to collab with the factionless and take over Erudite. In chapter 10, Evelyn is showing Triss around their compound or whatever. In this conversation, Evelyn reveals to Triss that Triss's dad was actually originally an Erudite, the same as her. Evelyn says, your father is born an erudite. His friends were friends with Jeanine Matthews' parents before they died. What the? Your father and Jeanine used to play together as children. I used to watch them pass books back and forth at school. That's what the erudite kids do. They just pass books back and forth. These are children, okay? They're picking their boogers and I don't know what else kids do, but they're passing books? What does that even mean, dude? Passing books? Triss says that the idea is so ridiculous to her that she snorts. She half snorts and half laughs. And she says, it can't be true. Except, this is a weird piece of writing too, except he never talked about his family or his childhood. Except he did not have the quiet demeanor of someone who grew up in abnegation. Except his hatred of erudite was so vehement that it must have been personal. Triss says to her, listen carefully. I check over her shoulder for Tobias to make sure he's not listening in. So you can listen in to Tobias and his mom's conversations, but he can't listen in when you're talking to his mom about him. She says, I'm not stupid. I can see that you're trying to use him, and I'll tell him so if he hasn't figured it out already. Why do you think that you know more than Tobias knows? And when Tobias is already more suspicious of his own father than you are, you think that you're going to be more suspicious of his mother? Am I making sense when I say that? You do not need to step in between Tobias and his parents and be another person that's making it harder for Tobias to openly communicate with his parents. And Evelyn says to her, my dear girl, I am his family. I am permanent. You are only temporary. Which is against, you know, a lot of what this book's government is for, you know, faction over blood, faction over blood, faction over blood. That's all they're saying. And now I'm supposed to believe that Evelyn thinks that Tobias is going to value her above faction when he specifically left the family to go to a new faction and wants nothing to do with you guys. After Triss leaves Evelyn, she questions to herself if she should tell Tobias about what she just learned from Evelyn. She says, I don't want to make him think that he has erudite in his blood. I don't want to give him any reason to return to them, which also doesn't line up, at least to me, with Tobias's character. And I feel like Triss thinks she knows him so much at the time, but she doesn't know him. I know Tobias. She doesn't know him like I know him. I get what he's going through right now. Anyways, Caleb approaches Triss at the end of this chapter and tells her that he's going to go with Susan to a factionless safe house where they have other abnegation and maybe it's a little bit safer and more secure. I guess he's linking up with Susan now that he's factionless. There's really, the cards are all on the table. But she decides not to tell Tobias about the erudite thing for now. So then Triss and Tobias make their way to the headquarters of the Candor, which is the next step in Tobias's plan to take down the erudite, I guess, is to try to get Candor on their side. The Candor headquarters is a wide cement building that overlooks what was once the river. The sign says, Merc is Mart. It used to read Merchandise Mart, which is walkable from where I live in Chicago. You know, maybe we got to go check it out. It used to read Merchandise Mart, but most people refer to it as the Merciless Mart because the Candor are merciless, but honest. Tobias has not told Triss yet about the conversation he had with his mother, and Triss has not told Tobias about the conversation that she has had with his mother. The lobby of this building is large and well lit, with black marble floors that stretch back to an elevator bank. A ring of white marble tiles in the center of the room form the symbol of Candor, a set of unbalanced scales meant to symbolize the weighing of truth against lies. The room is crawling with armed dauntless. When they enter and the dauntless notice them, all of the dauntless guards that are around the Candor headquarters approach Triss and Tobias as if they're in trouble or there's some problem. They ask them to stand with their hands above their head. Triss wonders, why is everyone acting like we're about to attack them? I'm sorry, one of the soldiers says, but we were instructed to arrest you upon your arrival. So then Tobias and Triss have this dialogue while they're being held by the Candor, where Tobias says, sometimes I worry that you don't trust me. So Tobias is telling Triss about how he doesn't feel like she's telling him stuff, even though if we just go back a couple of pages earlier, we have a quote from Triss saying that Tobias still hasn't told her about the conversation he had with his mother last night, and that he seems so determined to get to Candor headquarters that it seems like he's planning something without her. So it seems like Tobias is very obviously hiding things from Triss also. Triss just tells Tobias that it still has to do with her parents dying and her killing Will, and that's why things seem so weird. The truth, of course, is that Tobias's mom said that stuff about how she used to be erudite, and this, I guess, is important enough to Triss that she doesn't want to tell Tobias because she thinks it'll change too much, even though Tobias doesn't give a shit about faction lines. I'm telling you, I know what Tobias thinks. I know how he acts. Triss doesn't even know this guy. The door opens and a few people file in the room, along with Jack Kang, the representative for Candor, and a brand new character in the Divergent series. By most faction standards, he's a young leader, only 39 years old. But she says by Dauntless standards, that's nothing. Eric became a Dauntless leader at 17. But that's probably one of the reasons the other factions don't take our opinions or decisions seriously. I think that has to be true. I'm like, if 39 years old is young for any other faction, I just don't possibly know what Eric could have that sets him apart from any other guy that they could get to be their leader as a 17-year-old. But I guess Eric was only made a leader because the rest of the dauntless leaders were corrupted. But I'm like, they could have picked someone older. It doesn't make sense that Eric would be the guy. And I need these physical descriptions so I can make my character model for Jack. Tris says that Jack is handsome with short black hair and warm slanted eyes like Tori's. Wait. Wait, what? Oh my god, I didn't catch that. He's got slanted eyes like Tori's and high cheekbones. So Jack King's Asian. Yeah. Another one. That's the biggest indication that Tori and him are Asian in the book so far. So then we slowly learn why Jack has these two locked up at Candor, and that's because they saw video footage of the attack, and Tobias was running the attack simulation. Tobias is confused how they even saw the footage of him running the simulation. Jack said they only took one copy of the data, but all of the footage of the Dauntless compound that was recorded during the attack was sent all across the city. So Jack tells them that all we saw was you running to the simulation and her nearly getting punched to death by you before she gave up. Then you guys stopped, had a rather abrupt lover's reconciliation, and then you stole the hard drive together. And he says one possible reason is because the simulation was over and you didn't want us to get our hands on it. Obviously, we know that Tris and Tobias stopped the simulation. Anyways, they try to explain themselves, but Jack's not interested in any of this. He says, I'm not interested in what you have to say right now. The truth will come out when you are both interrogated under the influence of truth serum. So yeah, we're at a new faction, which means there's a new serum that they use on their members to get them to do stuff they don't want to do. Tris and Tobias fall asleep in the holding cell that night, and Tris is woken up by a bunch of dauntless coming in the room, one of those dauntless being Christina. We have not seen her yet. We are only a quarter of the way into the book so far, regardless of where we are in this long ass video right now. I always take forever to explain like the first half of the book, and then the second half kind of flies by. But Christina shoves her way past the others and throws her arms around Tris. Obviously, she doesn't know yet that Tris was the one who killed Will. Tris says that she doesn't look like the Christina that she remembers. Her hair is shorter, like a boy's, and her skin is grayish instead of a warm brown. Christina will be there at my interrogation. She will hear what I did to Will. She will never forgive me. Christina brings up to Tris that Will died in the attack, and Tris doesn't really know what she should do. She's like, should I pretend that I don't even know? Should I tell her the truth right now? Tris decides to half lie to Christina, and she says, I know. I saw him on the monitors when I was in the control room. I'm sorry, Christina. Christina also reassures Tris about the truth serum. She says, don't worry about it. It's easy. You barely know what's happening when you're under it. It's only when you resurface that you even know what you said. I went under it when I was a kid, and it's pretty commonplace in Candor. Pretty commonplace that they strap you down and inject you with a serum that just makes you spill all your secrets. Tris says, is everyone else all right? Uriah, Lynn, Marlene? These are all Dauntless members that Tris met in the first book, but they were never like main characters in the book. They continue to also be pretty bland characters with not much personality in this book, at least so far. So like, I'm going to make character photos for them. Honestly, most of them are pretty faceless to me. They kind of are just extra characters in the background. I don't know how they're going to handle that in the movie. I feel like we had something in the first book where it was like a nice set of a bunch of characters that at least had pretty basic personalities, but you could like, you know, separate them from one another. If we're talking about Peter and we're talking about Will and we're talking about Al and we're talking about Edward and we're talking about all the boys. But here it's like Uriah, Marlene, Lynn, Shauna, and Zeke, all these random people, dude. Tris says, is everyone else all right? And Christina says, all here, except Uriah's brother, Zeke, who's with the other Dauntless. And Tris says, and I love this quote, what? Zeke, who secured my straps on the zip line? A traitor? Oh, no, not Susie, the girl who bagged my groceries last Tuesday at the local market. I can't believe she would have freaking swapped sides. But yeah, Uriah is the same year as Tris. He is the younger brother to Zeke, who's one of the older Dauntless, and I guess he broke off from the rest of the Dauntless and decided to be with the erudite. For some reason, when I picture Uriah, I always think of this specific Fortnite character. I gotta open Fortnite and see if I can figure out this guy's name. Okay, I just unlocked, what's this guy's name? Ned Flanders. Oh my god, is it this guy? Okay, so like maybe this is the guy I was looking for. I don't know. This is not what I had in my head, to be honest. So I guess we'll use this character as Uriah for now. Like maybe I can make him do a little dance. Okay, sorry you guys had to see that. So anyways, chapter 12 is Tobias's big truth serum court hearing. The first thing they ask Tobias is what his parents' names are, and Tobias doesn't feel like that's relevant, but then everyone is like, that means you're hiding something. Like, you must be hiding something, even though it's just that he doesn't want people to know all of his trauma and his bad relationships with his parents. But as the court hearing goes on, everyone learns that Tobias is the son of Marcus Eden. Apparently, the Candor all know that Marcus is the most influential government official, so apparently that's a big deal. They ask Tobias why he transferred from abnegation to dauntless. Of course, Tobias doesn't want to answer this because it has to do with his dad beating him and the fact that he was scared of his dad. Triss says to Christina, "This is horrible, wrong." Christina says, "What?" It's a simple question. Christina kind of has the Candor woke mind virus where she thinks that asking questions and being honest is a very simple thing. It's just a simple question. Triss shakes her head and says, "You don't understand." And Christina smiles at her and says, "You really care about him. That's cute. That's so cute that you care so much about him." But Tobias admits to everyone that he left abnegation to protect himself from his father. Finally, they start asking Tobias about the specifics of what he was doing with the simulation, and he reveals his divergence to everybody in the room. He says that he was not under the simulation at first. It didn't work. And the guy who's asking the questions laughs and says, "What do you mean it didn't work?" And Tobias says one of the defining characteristics of the divergent is that their minds are resistant to simulations. And so everyone starts talking because they're like, oh my god, this guy's divergent. What is this? Christina turns to Triss and says, "Are you also divergent? Is that why you were awake?" Triss nods at her and tells Christina this for the first time. Triss asks if Christina knows what it means, and Christina says, "I heard about it when I was young, like it was a fantasy story. There are people with special powers among us," like that. Oh, wait, did she just say And Triss said, "Well, it's not a fantasy, and it's not that big of a deal." Seems like a pretty big deal. You know, you have something wrong with you in the head. You've got like ADHD or something, and the government wants to kill you. I think that divergent must be a metaphor for ADHD and how we're all ruled out of society. Like we're some kind of circus freak. It's really hard for us. Anyways, it's pages and pages of this guy asking questions about what happened in the third act of Divergent and having Tobias explain it to everybody again. But we hear it from Tobias's perspective this time, which he says that someone entered the room and I thought it was a dauntless soldier trying to stop me from destroying the simulation. I was fighting her and ... Tobias scowls, struggling. And then she stopped, and I got confused. Even if I had been awake, I would have been confused. Why would she surrender? Why didn't she just kill me? I still don't understand how she knew it would work. I think my conflicted emotions confused the simulation, and then I heard her voice, and somehow that enabled me to fight the simulation. The interviewer says, "What is the name of this person?" "Triss," Tobias says. "Beatrice Pryor, I mean. Did you know her before this happened?" "Yes." "How did you know her?" "I was her instructor. Now we're together." Sounds kind of gross since you were her instructor like a few weeks ago. Not even. It's been like days, right? She was a student of mine. And then the moment that she got through initiation, we started dating. It seems pretty cool. That's just the classic way it happens, you know? It's one of those classic teacher-student falling in love moments. So then for no reason, the interviewer says, "I have a final question. Among the Candor, before a person is accepted into our community, they have to completely expose themselves." Which, whatever, decide what you want to do in your own community. But Tobias didn't choose to be a part of the Candor community, so why does he need to answer this question that is completely unrelated to what he's on trial for, which is, Tobias Eden, what are your deepest regrets? Tobias says that choosing Dauntless in order to escape his father was an act of cowardice. I regret that cowardice. It means I am not worthy of my faction. I will always regret it. Triss learns that he wanted to leave Dauntless, but he stayed because of her, and he never even told her that. Yeah, I feel like this is like hardcore psychological torture to inject a serum into people and ask them anything that you want without any regulations or rules. And if they decide to ask you about something completely unrelated that you're embarrassed about, even if it's not a mistake you made, you know, you got to live with that now. Maybe there's secrets of other people too that have, whatever, I don't care. I don't care. Anyways, it's Triss's turn to take the truth serum. She girl bosses this guy who's about to stick the needle in her neck, and she says, I would rather do it myself. I don't know why they just let her grab the needle and inject herself. It seems like this is kind of like a rule of law thing, you know, and you're on trial. I don't think you get to administer the serum, but they just let her do it because she's like, let me do it. Let me have it. It's always let me do it and let me have it with this girl. Anyways, we have the second half of this chapter, which is just Triss doing the truth serum and explaining the last book also, which is less interesting because she narrated the last book, so we already know how she feels. They asked Triss, they said, Tobias said that you fought him, but then stopped. Why did you do that? They asked if she just gave up, and she said no. I remembered something I had done in my fear landscape in dauntless initiation. In a simulation, a woman demanded that I kill my family, and I just let her kill me instead. I was so frantic, but all I could think was that there was something to it. There was a strength in it, and I couldn't kill him, so I had to try. So her explanation was that it worked in a simulation, even though she got shot in the simulation show she should have gotten shot in real life. But then they just start glazing her. The guy says, are you telling me that you were almost murdered by the erudite and then fought your way into the dauntless compound and destroyed the simulation? And she said yes, and he says, I think I speak for everyone when I say that you've earned the title of dauntless. I'm like, wow, that seemed to really go well for you, Triss. I'm so glad for you. But then they have to, of course, ask her what her biggest regrets are. She says, I regret ... She sees Tobias in the crowd, and she sees Christina standing next to him. And she says, Will. I shot Will, I say, while he was under the simulation. I killed him. He was going to kill me, but I killed him. My friend. Will, with the crease between his eyebrows, with green eyes like celery, and the ability to quote the Dauntless Manifesto from memory. Yes, those are all the traits we remember from Will, because he didn't have any personality in the first book, besides the fact that he used to be erudite, and then he started dating, Christina. Green eyes like celery, what the hell? And Triss says at the very end, there's something else. Something worse that I didn't realize before. I was willing to die rather than kill Tobias, but the thought never occurred to me when it came to Will. I decided to kill Will in a fraction of a second, which is not true. She kept yelling his name. He kept walking towards her. He was approaching her with a gun, and her mom was standing next to her too, I think. So it's like, you could only really do so much to stop someone who's completely under the mind control. You lost in a fight against Tobias. Like, he pinned you down and was going to kill you. It's not like we're comparing two different things here. Everyone in the room responds to this and says, thank you for your honesty. But Christina and Tobias say nothing. One part that I didn't like about this chapter is that we are reading the book from Triss's perspective, and we are hearing her under the truth serum. And I think it could have been a really cool way to kind of weirdly break the fourth wall of like the character narration if they gave her the truth serum and all of her internal thoughts that we usually see in the book are actually things that she is saying out loud in front of everybody. But we'll have her answer questions in front of all of the people under the truth serum, but then she'll do like 2 paragraphs of internal thinking and talking about, you know, what do I regret? I don't regret choosing Dauntless. I don't regret leaving Abnegation. I don't regret shooting the guards outside the control room, blah, blah, blah. You should be just spilling, you know, it's supposed to be spilling out of your mouth. So why am I hearing you say, I regret, and then I have to read 30 words before your next word? It doesn't make sense to me. Finally, at the start of chapter 13, everyone is left the interrogation room, and Triss goes up to Christina, and they have their first conversation since Christina learned that Triss killed Will. Triss said he had a gun. He was about to shoot me. He was under the simulation. And Christina says, you killed him. Her words sound bigger than words usually do, like they expanded in her mouth before she spoke them. Now, when I'm doing like critical reading, literary analysis, you might say, what is that sentence supposed to mean to me? You know, I'm sitting here reading it as if I'm like a high schooler trying to understand the subtext. Her words sounded bigger than words normally do, like they expanded in her mouth before she spoke them. So was she like, you killed him? Is that what, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. Then she has an interaction with Tobias, the first one since Tobias learned that she killed Will. And he doesn't really say anything. He's really quiet. And he says, we can talk about it tomorrow, he says, quietly. quiet is dangerous with Tobias. Okay, yeah, sure. Sounds like what you say about like your abusive boyfriend. That night, Tris sneaks away and goes back to the interrogation room where she was interrogated to think, I guess, to have like a protagonist inner monologue moment. She goes up to the middle of the room and sets her hands on the back of the chair that she was interrogated in. She says it's plain, wooden, a little creaky. How strange that something so simple could have been instrumental in my decision to ruin one of my most important relationships and damage another. I don't think that the chair had any weight in your decision. I don't know why she talks about it like the chair had a piece of whatever's going on. That's like just being like, look at this floor. This floor is so simple, yet it was so instrumental in my decision to ruin my relationships. What are you it's a chair. The chair had nothing to do with it, dude. The edge of the chair bites into my palms. I was squeezing it harder than I thought. Anyways, she walks up to the top of the amphitheater in the interrogation room and she hauls the chair off of the ledge. I grab the chair and hurl it over the ledge. A faint cry escapes me. It grows into a yell, which transforms into a scream, and then I'm standing on the ledge of the merciless mart, screaming as the chair sails towards the ground, screaming until my throat burns. And then I think of Al. In these moments, I don't want to be thinking of Al. If you don't remember Al from the first book, he was one of the dauntless initiates that had a crush on Tris, but then he ended up siding with Peter and Drew. He helped Peter sexually assault Tris and almost kill her. So, and then he killed himself. So that's Al. For the first time, I feel like I understand Al. I'm tired of being Tris. I've done bad things. I can't take them back, and they are part of who I am. Most of the time, they seem like the only thing I am. Honestly, I can relate with that. So she is starting to just be like, oh, I wish I could just die now. Like, she starts saying that a decent bit, which is actually kind of quite sad. She thinks about just jumping off the ledge there and ending it, but she says she can't do it because her parents lost their lives out of love for her, and losing hers for no good reason would be a terrible way to repay them for that sacrifice, no matter what I've done. I guess I kind of like that little section where she's sort of battling, whatever, I'm not going to say anything serious about this book. Just leave me alone. She then goes back and runs into Tobias, and they finally have a conversation about the truth that she admitted in the interrogation room. He says, you didn't tell me. Why not? And Tris says, because I didn't. Shakes my head. I didn't know how to. He scowls. It's pretty easy, Tris. Oh yeah, I say, nodding. It's so easy. All I have to do is go up to you and say, by the way, I shot Will, and now the guilt is ripping me to shreds. But what's for breakfast, right? Right? Why don't you try killing one of your best friends and then dealing with the consequences? And as I guessed, because I know Tobias better than Tris knows him, he says, I'm not trying to pretend that I understand. I just meant that I wish you trusted me enough to tell me things like that. I mean, I had to find out that you almost drowned in a water tank from Caleb. Doesn't that seem a little strange to you? Doesn't it seem a little strange that you told your family member about one of these things and you never told me about it? And to give Tris a little bit more credit, a lot has happened since then, and it was sort of went from you guys being in one near-death experience to another for the whole third act of that book, and you kind of ran straight to Tobias and had to fight him after that in the last book, so like, it makes sense. And she replies to Tobias by saying other things seem stranger, like finding out that your boyfriend's supposedly dead mother is still alive by seeing her in person, or overhearing his plans to ally with the factionless, but he never tells you about it. That seems a little strange to me. I thought we'd get to those things eventually. Do I have to tell you everything right away, huh? And it's like, aren't you doing the same thing to her? Like, what you God, 4, you don't want to tell me everything right away, but I have to tell you everything right away? Can't you see how stupid it is? Kind of a good point, though. First of all, don't use that name like a weapon against me, he says, pointing at me. Don't use that name like a weapon. He also says, second, I was not making plans to ally with the factionless. I was just thinking it over. If I had made a decision, I would have said something to you. And third, it would be different if you had actually intended to tell me about Will at some point, but it's obvious that you didn't. And Tris says, I did tell you about Will. That wasn't truth serum. It was me. I did so because I chose to. Okay, dude, just because you told them in front of the crowd of all the people, like, that's so stupid. It's such a bad excuse. I was aware under the serum. I could have lied. I could have kept it from you, but I didn't because I thought you deserved to know the truth. Like, what are you talking about? You didn't want to tell Christina, so why wouldn't you have lied and then just told him on your own? He says, what a way to tell me in front of over 100 people. How intimate. Triss says, oh, so it's not enough that I told you. It has to be in the right setting. Next time, should I brew some tea and make sure the lighting is right too, mate? See, I'm like, now Triss is losing the conversation. You're losing the argument. Now you're just like gaslighting him. You're gaslighting him. Okay, so we finished chapter 12. That's only 5 chapters. I was supposed to get through a lot. Oh, actually, I'm on chapter 14. We're totally fine, guys. I did 6 chapters. Yeah, this chapter ends with a pretty tough argument. Tobias says sometimes it isn't easy to be with you, Triss. I'm like, you guys have known each other for like not very long. Why are you guys dating right now? There's a civil war going on. So then at the beginning of chapter 14, we're introduced to a new character kind of named Lynn. She approaches Triss when she's sitting by herself and she says, what the hell are you doing here? Triss says that she looks up and Lynn, who I first met when she stomped on my toes in a Hancock building elevator, stands over me with raised eyebrows. How, it's like Triss has to explain the context of how she knows these people, and it's always the most random thing that's happened in the past. Oh, that's Bobby. He was in line next to me last week during Dauntless breakfast. Like, seriously, like, what is going on? Lynn takes Triss across the Candor headquarters to a room that is specifically for the Dauntless to stay at right now. Triss says that she's staying out of the way because she's trying to do Christina a favor, and Lynn says, Christina, she snorts. She's a lovesick puppy. People die. That's what happens in war. She'll figure it out eventually. I'm like, has your boyfriend that you had for a few days gotten shot in the head by your best friend? Like, do you understand what that's like? Apparently that's another day in Dauntless. Triss is like, yeah, people die, but it's not always your good friend who kills them. And Lynn says, whatever. Lynn introduces Triss to her little brother, whose name is Hector. And Hector says to Triss, you're divergent. My mom says to stay away from you because you might be dangerous. And Lynn says, yeah, she's a big, scary divergent and she's going to make your head explode with only the power of her brain. Don't tell me you actually believe all that stuff about the divergent, you fucking loser. Lynn kicks her little brother out of his bunk bed so that Triss can sleep there. And Lynn says that her brother deserves it. He called Zeke a traitor right to Uriah's face. It's not like it's not true, but that's no reason to be a jerk about it. I think Candor is rubbing off on him. What the hell? Thought he was your little brother. Candor's rubbing off your little brother? And then Lynn calls over another new character who we have maybe seen one other time. She says, hey, Mar. Marlene pokes her head around one of the bunks and smiles toothily at me. Hey, Triss, says Marlene. Welcome. And Triss asks Lynn about what the kid stuff that she was referring to when she was talking to her brother about Dauntless. And she said, the divergent. People with special brain powers? Come on. I know you believe in it, but I don't. And then Triss is like, well, how do you explain me being awake during the simulations or resisting one entirely? And she says, I think the leaders choose people at random and change the simulations for them. Well, which is, I don't know. Lynn says something about her sister, and Triss says, you have a sister? Yeah, Lynn says. She's 18. She was in 4's initiate class. Shauna, she says. I remember Shauna. She was one of the people who caught me after ziplining. How do you even remember who all the people were that caught you after ziplining? Uriah shows up to them and says that they're actually going to the Hancock building again tonight to spy on the erudite. He said they're going for surveillance. They heard the erudite keep their lights on all night, which will make it easier to look through their windows, see what they're doing. And then, of course, once Uriah says that he's going, Marlene says, what? Oh, me too. I'm gonna go get food. Wanna come? Veronica Roth is doing the same thing she always does, where she needs to pair together all the boys and girls in the book. Everyone needs a lover. And she doesn't just hint at it. After this happens, Lynn's mouth puckers, and Triss says, what? She shakes her head. They've just been hanging out alone all the time lately. Another one of those classic third wheel moments. And while Triss is talking to Lynn, she just kind of starts gooning on Lynn, actually. She says, her eyes fix on mine. I never noticed before how strange they are. A golden brown. And now that her hair has grown in somewhat, and her baldness isn't the first thing I see. I think she used to have a shaved head, I guess. I also notice her delicate nose, her full lips. She's striking without trying to be. I'm envious of her for a moment. It's like, damn, is there something going on between you and Lynn? And then her and Lynn continue to banter. I'm like, I don't even know who Lynn is. Like, what am I supposed to think about Lynn? She's like, I don't see how Uriah can be flirty with everything that's going on. And Triss said, what, he's supposed to shuffle around scowling all the time? What, he can't be horny? Maybe you can learn something from him. She's like, you're one to talk. You're always moping. We should start calling you Beatrice Pryor, Queen of Tragedy. First of all, the dead naming is crazy. I don't know. There's definitely some sex tension between the two of them. I thought I'd shorten sexual tension to sex tension, but it sounds a little weird. What do you guys think? Should we start doing that? Sound off in the comments down below. So then when they're going to the Hancock building, it says, Lynn jabs her finger into the button for the first floor. I stare at her reflections in the doors. She's taller than I am, just by a few inches. And though her baggy shirt and pants try to obscure it, I can tell that her body bends and curves like it's supposed to. Oh my god, I think it's getting hot in here. She's seeing every single curve and crevice. And then Uriah introduces Tris to another character that I forgot about named Lauren. Lauren is the one that allowed Tris to enter her fear landscape in the last book. So she was kind of like, well, she was kind of Tobias, but for the Dauntless born initiates. Uriah is surprised that Tris went through Lauren's fear landscape. And he says, really? I thought the transfers would go through Four's landscape. And Lauren says, like he would let anyone do that, she says, snorting. And Tris goes, something inside me gets warm and soft. The hell? That sounds gross. I think you're talking about being horny. And then Tris sees a flicker of blue over Lauren's shoulder, and the guns go off and the glass doors explode. It's always the flicker. The amount of times that she's like, flicker of movement, a flash, a moment, and then the guns go off. And at the end of this chapter, Tris says, all around me people drop to the ground, my fellow faction members, my closest friends, all of them falling. They must be dead or dying as the ear-splitting bang of bullets fills my ears. So at the beginning of chapter 15, Tris says that she was shot by something, but she's not bleeding, but it somehow knocked her down. And she hears a crack against the floor next to her face, and a metal cylinder about the size of her hand rolls to a stop against her head. And then white smoke sprays out of it. And when the smoke clears away, all of the Dauntless around her are all lying on the floor. Everyone around her is unconscious, and so she decides to just let her head drop and close her eyes also, so she blends in with everybody. Classic Tris move. We quickly hear a voice walking among the Dauntless traitors that showed up, and it is Eric. Eric is now finally back in the book. It's about goddamn time. So then Tris goes to one of the Dauntless traitors that got shot when they entered and takes her jacket off and puts it on as a disguise. I feel like Eric and a lot of the other Dauntless traitors have got to recognize her, but as long as they don't see her too much, then they'll think that she's another one of them, I guess. Tris grabs her knife, and as she's putting on the jacket, someone says, Tris! Uriah stands behind me. What? Uriah, the classic Divergent character, is Divergent also? Divergent, I ask him. There's no time to be shocked. Yeah, he says. Questions later. We have to get up there. Uriah says, up there? Why? We gotta get out of here. And Tris says, you want to run away before you know what's going on? I scowl at him. Before the Dauntless upstairs knows what hit them? But I'm like, neither of them two have a gun on them. Tris can't even shoot a gun. She just has a freaking knife. And so it's like, you want to run into all the guys who have guns and are trying to kill the Divergent? That's the plan. And Uriah says, what if someone recognizes us? And Tris says, we just have to hope that they won't. Okay, dude. And I mean, Tris says it herself. She's like, what do I expect to gain from submerging myself in an army of dauntless traitors? Deep inside me, I know the answer. I am being reckless. I will probably gain nothing. I will probably die. And more disturbing still, I don't really care. So she's doing it because she doesn't care. And then Tris says this thing where she says, as I'm walking down the hallway, I think of a verse of the song that Candor children used to sing when they thought no one could hear them. I'm like, how do you remember a verse of a song that another faction sang when they were kids? And the lyrics of the song are, Dauntless is the cruelest of the five. They tear each other to pieces. And she says, we really are the cruelest faction. Watching dauntless traitors induce a sleeping simulation that is not so different from the one that forced them to kill members of Abnegation not a month ago. She steps over another dead guy and she says, I hum the beginning of the next verse of the song under my breath. Erudite is the coldest of the five. Knowledge is a costly thing. What is this song that you guys sang? Why is this has never come up? So often there are things that Tris has no idea about, like the other initiations for other factions. But then we get other things like this random song that she knows that the Candor sing when they're younger. So Tris sees Eric and the rest of the traitors specifically looking for Divergent to bring back with them. While Tris is telling a younger Divergent girl how to escape out of the building, she looks behind her and Eric is standing right behind her. He's right behind me, isn't he? They have a little fight, and Eric gets her right where he wants her, and he presses a gun barrel to her forehead. And he says, I don't understand how you could possibly be stupid enough to come up here with no gun, which is what I was wondering, actually. And she said, well, I'm smart enough to do this. And she stomps on his foot, which she fired a bullet into less than a month ago. And he screams, his face contorting, and drives the heel of the gun into my jaw. And he says to her, I was surprised to discover that you were still alive, considering I'm the one who told Jeanine to construct that water tank for you. Oh my god, what a reveal. Eric says that Jeanine thought studying one of the divergent's reactions to a real-life version of a simulation would be fascinating. And I'm like, but why though? Is there a reason why they specifically feel like they'd get anything out of that? They end up catching Uriah and a few other divergent along with Triss, and they all have them in a room together, and Eric has a gun on Triss. And the chapter ends with Triss saying, I should probably be afraid, but instead a hysterical Joker laugh bubbles inside of me because I just remembered something. Maybe I can't hold a gun, but I have a knife in my back pocket. So epic, and it's been 2.5 hours of me talking about 8 more chapters of the book, I guess. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I thought it was going to be shorter than the Divergent video, but this is not looking good. I am reading faster than I am able to make videos about the book. Okay, I'll be back soon with more Insurgent. All right, guys, I'm back. I'm about to talk about chapter 16 of Insurgent. Eric and the goons got Triss and a bunch of the other divergents held hostage near the elevators. Triss says that a Candor boy who can't be older than 11 sits to her left. He's braver than the woman to my right. He stares at the dauntless soldier in front of him, unflinching. Triss has her eyes sight on the fact that she just wants to stab Eric. She just wants to kill that motherfucker. Eric says, my orders are to take only 2 of you back to erudite headquarters for testing. The rest of you are to be executed. There are several ways to determine who among you will be least useful to us. Eric is standing in front of Triss and the other divergent, and he says, the brain finishes developing at age 25. Therefore, your divergence is not completely developed. And he lifts his gun and he shoots the 11-year-old boy in the head, guys. What the hell? Why would he? What? Eric's doing his villain monologue. I'll spare you the details. Triss gets up, lurches forward, and she pulls her hand out of her pocket. She closes her eyes as she thrusts the blade up and towards Eric. She stabs the shit out of him and starts a big shootout again. There's gunfire everywhere. Triss is trying to grab one of the guns, but she can't because she's like scared of them or whatever. I don't know. I'm like, get over it, dude. Come on. All of a sudden, Tobias and a bunch of the Dauntless show up to save the day, as always. Eric doesn't die, unfortunately. He's just moaning and groaning and grunting on the ground. And at the start of chapter 17, Tobias explains to Triss what happened. When the erudite got to the building, one of the erudite ran up to the highest level of the building and evacuated a bunch of Dauntless, including Tobias, and that erudite person was Kara, who is Will's sister. So Triss tries figuring out what happened the night before. There were hundreds of people unconscious on the floor, shot with something other than bullets, and she has no idea why. She takes her jacket off and she sees a metal disc about the size of her pinky fingernail that's pressed against her skin, and surrounding it is a patch of blue strands, like someone injected blue dye into the tiny veins just beneath the surface of her skin. She has to yank really hard at it to get it out of her skin, and she's trying to figure out what this blue stuff is. So it seems like the Dauntless traders showed up. They had these special guns that they shot everyone with that injected them. And then they put a bunch of gas out there and made them all sleep. So everyone wakes up and they've got these little blue chips on them. So it seems like they've been injected with something. Uriah comes to check on Triss, and she says that she's struck suddenly by how handsome he is. All his features are proportionate. His eyes are dark and lively. His skin is bronze brown. I mean, it's probably because he's a Fortnite character, but you know. And she says, not like Tobias, who is almost shy when he smiles. Like he's surprised you bothered to look at him in the first place. Jeez, dude. I feel like every time she compares Tobias to like another human being, you wouldn't get the sense that she thinks he's sexy. Besides, you know, 95% of her gooning over him. But every once in a while she throws in something and she's like, well, he's not like the other boys. He looks like a mouse. They're like medium ugly BF. Is what I think she's going for. We also learned during this conversation that Eric did not die. The Candor decided to give him medical treatment. Something about the honorable treatment of prisoners. And I guess Jack King is going to interrogate him in private. So Triss and Uriah are trying to figure out why they actually showed up and did this in the first place. Uriah asks Triss for a favor and he says, don't tell anyone I'm divergent. Shauna's my friend, and I don't want her to suddenly become afraid of me. So I feel like being divergent is sort of a metaphor for being like gay now. You don't want anyone to blow your cover because you think your friends might be a little homophobic. Shauna and the rest of these people are like, oh, I grew up thinking that the divergent had special powers and they're scary and stuff. No, they're just gay. You know, and I get it. You've been friends with these people for a long time through thick and thin. You don't want them and their homophobia to be affecting you. But at the end of the day, if your friends are homophobic, if your friends are divergent-phobic, then fuck them, you know? We find out that the Candor boy Eric shot in the head was named Bobby. Trish says she's awake all night removing needles from people's arms. She was just talking about how hard it was for her to do it. I don't know why she'd need to be awake all night as the specific person who's ripping the needles out of people's arms. Can't everybody just help each other rip them out of their arms all at once? Do we need to make a line in front of Trish because she's the only one who can rip the thing out of her arm? Oh god, and then the freaking dork crew shows up, Caleb and Marcus. Marcus isn't dead, by the way. They heard about the attack an hour earlier, so now they're here just to check on them. We also find out Peter is still alive, and he's exactly where you expect him to be with the erudite. I guess Peter's just a bad guy deep down. He just honestly sucks pretty bad. Trish and Tobias kind of start talking again after their last fight, and they kind of are immediately fighting again. I like these little dialogue moments because I get to kind of pick a side amongst the high school, you know, relationship conflict. Tobias approaches Trish slowly. You okay? I might throw up if I have to answer that one more time. I don't have a bullet in my head, do I? So I'm good. Your jaw is so swollen you look like you have a wad of food in your cheek, and you just stabbed Eric, he says, frowning. I'm not allowed to ask if you're okay? What, I can't ask if you're okay anymore? That's against the law now? As they're talking, some of the Dauntless see Tobias and they start heckling him again about his dad. He says, oh, look, it's Tobias Eden. I saw your daddy here earlier, Eden. Are you gonna go hide? Yeah, are you gonna hide, coward? These guys suck. I'm like, you're in a war and you guys are supposedly supposed to be on the same side, and you guys are all making fun of like one of the most talented people inside of your faction because he decided to ditch his dad who sucks. Her and Tobias go away in private and have a conversation where they come to the conclusion that the erudite have developed long-lasting transmitters for simulations, and as I suspected, they shot all of them to be able to put them under simulations whenever they want. All right, argument time, let's get into it. Tobias says, one thing I don't understand is that you were downstairs. You could have just run away, but instead you decided to dive into a crowd of armed dauntless all by yourself, and I bet you didn't have a gun. She says, what makes you think I didn't have a gun? You haven't been able to touch a gun since the attack, Tobias says. I understand why with the whole Will thing, but... And then Trish says, that has nothing to do with it. Really, Trish? The fact that you killed Will with a gun has nothing to do with the fact that you can't touch a gun? Even though every time you touch a gun, you bring up you killed Will with a gun? Tobias says, you should have stayed with the amity. You should have stayed far away from all of this. No, I shouldn't have, Trish says. You think you know what's best for me? You have no freaking idea. I was going crazy with the amity, and here I finally feel sane again. Which is odd considering you're acting like a psychopath, Tobias says. It's not brave choosing the position you were in yesterday. It's beyond stupid. It's suicidal. And Tobias cuts to the chase. He says, Trish, I just don't want to lose you. And Trish thinks he might be right. She says there's a part of her that wants to be lost, that struggles to join her parents and Will so that she doesn't have to ache for them anymore. A part of her that wants to just see whatever comes next. I don't think there's that much of a benefit of me picking a side or not here, but I will say, you know, Tobias did win that one, you know? The boys took that one home. What else happens? Lynn meets Caleb and just, like, calls him ugly to his face. Lynn says, so you're her brother? I guess we know who got the good genes. And she says the expression on Caleb's face is that his mouth is drawn into a slight pucker and his eyes are wide. Uriah shows up and says that he overheard someone talking about Eric's interrogation in the lunch line, and apparently he knew almost nothing about Jeanine's plan. Now, they're all surprised by this, but Caleb's like, well, I'm not surprised. It would be stupid to confide your entire plan to one person. It's infinitely smarter to give little pieces of it to each person working with you. That way, if someone betrays you, the loss isn't too great. But I'm like, really? Are you telling me Eric actually knew nothing about Jeanine's plan? Like, what do you mean he knew nothing? They showed up. They were the ones that shot the transmitter serum shit. They're the ones that... He's the one that shot the 11-year-old boy in the head. Like, Marlene says, I heard the Candor made ice cream, you know? It's kind of like a, it sucks we got attacked, but at least there are desserts thing. But it probably won't be as good as Dauntless cake. Someone must have pissed in this guy's Dauntless cake, because he seems pretty upset. So we're getting to chapter 18, which I think might be my least favorite chapter in the book so far. This chapter legitimately made me angry and upset as I read it. It's one thing for there to be dumb things that certain characters say or things that don't line up logically. You know, there's a lot of emotions running wild. This is the chapter where Jack Kang explains to everybody what he plans to do after the erudite attack happened. As a candor would say, he opens up and says, I've heard many reports from a variety of perspectives, and I have gotten a sense for what is straightforward and what requires more investigation. He thinks that what requires more investigation is the divergent, and so he asks anyone who is divergent to step forward in that moment. Tobias and Triss obviously show up. Everyone knows they're divergent after the truth serum, but what people did not expect is that someone else would step forward, and that person is Marcus. Marcus is also divergent. Guys, divergence is supposed to be really rare and really specific. We can't just keep giving it to everybody in the book. We need to like scale it back a little bit on the divergence scale, because before it was like this anomaly, and now I'm like, all right, is this like having your birthday on a goddamn leap year? Jack is surprised that Marcus is stepping forward, and he says, yes, I understand that you were all concerned. You had never heard of the divergent a week ago, and now all that you know is that they are immune to something to which you are susceptible, and that's a frightening thing. But I can assure you that there is nothing to be afraid of as far as we are concerned. So he said that nobody had heard about the Dauntless until about a week ago, but how many times have we heard from other characters that they had knew about the Dauntless since they were a kid, or they had heard rumors about the Dauntless and they didn't know if it was real? Now, I looked this up online to see if I was missing something about this, but the internet kind of just said that he was probably referring to the true significance of the Divergent and being a target in the war, and less about actually just hearing rumors about Divergent people. Anyways, I call bullshit on that. I think that's dumb. We go back and forth between Triss being like, I've never heard of this divergent thing, but then there's like other kids from other factions that have heard of it. Maybe it's because in abnegation they didn't want to subject her to that, but then you're going to school with other kids. I don't know how this world works. Jack says that it seems clear to him that we were attacked so that the erudite could find the divergent, and he asks Marcus if he knows why that is. Marcus says he doesn't know why that is. He says maybe their intention was merely to identify them, but it seems like useful information to have if they intend to use their simulations again. And I'm under the impression that that is why they're looking for the divergent, is because they're trying to run simulations on everyone and they want to figure out who they need to keep an eye on so that they don't get fucked over by two divergent again like they did in the last book. I feel like that's a good enough reason, but Triss says that was not their intention. It was not just to identify us. She says they wanted to kill us. They've been killing us since before any of this has happened. And that's true. They're killing them because they might affect the simulations. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing something that's going to come up later in the book, but as of right now, that seems like a good enough reason. And as a response to Triss saying that they want to kill all the divergent, Jack says, that sounds very much like a conspiracy theory. What reason would the erudite have to kill you? How does that sound like a conspiracy theory when they killed an 11-year-old boy? They had a bunch of divergent cooped up in the same place when Tobias and the rest of the Dauntless decided to save them. And what do you mean, what reason would the erudite have to kill you? It's that they want to get rid of the people that are gonna affect them being able to run simulations. But when he asks Triss what reason they have to kill her, she says, my heart races as I realize I can't answer his question. I start. Tobias interrupts me. Obviously, we don't know, but there are nearly a dozen mysterious deaths recorded among the Dauntless from the past 6 years, and there's a correlation between those people and irregular aptitude test results or initiation simulation results. And Jack says, well, that's intriguing. Correlation does not constitute evidence. Triss gets up and says, the Dauntless leader shot a Candor child in the head. Did you get a report of that? Did that seem worthy of investigation? This is where it really pisses me off. Jack Kang says, in fact, I did get a report of that, and shooting a child in cold blood is a terrible crime that could not go unpunished. Fortunately, we have the perp in custody and will be able to put him on trial. However, we must keep in mind that the Dauntless soldiers did not give any evidence of wanting to harm the majority of us, or they would have killed us while we were unconscious. So if the Dauntless show up and they just intend to harm a small portion of you guys, then that isn't a problem? Okay, buckle in, because Jack Kang says, their peaceful invasion suggests to me that it may be possible to negotiate a peace treaty with the erudite and the other Dauntless. So I will arrange a meeting with Jeanine Matthews to discuss that possibility as soon as possible. What do you mean their peaceful invasion? Didn't they literally break through the windows and shoot all you guys with needles and then gas the rooms? That's the opposite of the invasion being peaceful. It's an oxymoron. you moron. Triss says their invasion wasn't peaceful. Just because they didn't shoot you all in the head doesn't mean their intentions were somehow honorable. Why do you think they came here? Just to run through your hallways, knock you unconscious, and leave? Okay. Every line that Jack says pisses me off more and more. I assume they came here for people like you, says Jack. What do you mean people like her? You talking about people with ADHD? Or are you talking about gay people? What do you mean people like her? You know, that's a slippery slope. You're gonna start saying some bigoted shit if you don't watch out, Jack. This quote is crazy. He says, and while I am concerned for your safety, I don't think we can attack them just because they wanted to kill a fraction of our population. What do you mean? Yes, you do attack them if they tried to kill a fraction of your population. What are you saying? They also shot you with needles and you guys don't know what they do yet. It's been like a day. You don't know what they do. They could do something at any moment. You just ripped it out of everyone's arms. Guys, just because they wanted to kill a fraction of our population doesn't mean we need to go attack them. What the hell, guys? Let's try to do a peace treaty because they didn't actually hurt us. They killed an 11-year-old Candor boy. It's not even like it was another faction and you're not trying to get involved. They killed a Candor boy. That is literally asking for a war to begin. Killing you is not the worst thing they can do, Triss says. Controlling you is. Jack's lips curl with amusement. Oh? And how will they manage that? Dude, what do you think? Oh? Oh my god. Oh? For being Candor, this guy is not seeing the truth. It's not even like he got fooled or anything. The proof is right there in the dauntless pudding, bro. Tobias says they shot you with needles. Needles full of simulation transmitters. Simulations control you. And Jack says, with all of his confidence, we know how simulations work. The transmitter is not a permanent implant. If they intended to control us, they would have done it right away. Genuinely. Am I missing something? Are you guys seeing the other side of this argument? Or am I like, what do you mean they would have decided to do it right away? And also, you're talking about the erudite who are actively making new serums and transmitters every day. The reason the attack happened earlier in the book is because there was a new serum that would brain control you. It's not like that one's been around and they've just been waiting to use it. Triss tries to talk, but Jack loves to interrupt women. He interrupts her and he says, I know you've been under a lot of stress, Triss, and that you have done a great service to your faction and to abnegation. But I think your traumatic experience may have compromised your ability to be completely objective. I can't launch an attack based on a little girl's speculations. Couldn't they have written this to be like a little bit more understandable from both sides? I feel like we just watched an entire headquarters get invaded and their leader is like just a dumbass. Why is the one Asian leader like the worst one? Tobias tells Jack that he doesn't make decisions for all of the dauntless that are there. All the dauntless start heckling him, throwing tomatoes at Jack Kang. Boo, 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 boo. And he said, that's true. If you want to, you can feel free to storm the erudite compound by yourselves, but you will do so without our support. And may I remind you, you are greatly outnumbered and unprepared. None of them say anything, and Jack says, I thought so. Very well. We will contact Jeanine Matthews and see if we can negotiate a peace. Any objections? Yeah, I've got an objection, Jack. I think you suck. I think you suck so bad. And Triss says in her head, well, we can't attack without Candor unless we have the factionless. At the beginning of chapter 19, Triss is helping everyone clean up broken glass after the peaceful invasion that happened a couple chapters ago. And out the window, she sees two dauntless traitors outside. A man propping up a woman with a bleeding leg. And who is it but Tori? Showed Tori's new character photo. Beautiful new Asian character photo. And Zeke, Uriah's older brother. Uriah sees Zeke and they collide in an embrace that almost looks painful to me, slapping each other's backs and laughing with their fists clasped between them. So we learn that Tori and Zeke are actually spies that were still working for Dauntless, but secretly went with the traitors to get information from them. And the only people that knew about this were Uriah and Shauna. Zeke said that he ended up being a spy because he was just smack dab in a pack of Dauntless traitors when he got out of the simulation. And so he just decided to go with it. I just don't understand in the last book when they turned off the simulations and everyone stops being brainwashed, how they immediately look around and see all the people they murdered. And then they're like, well, you know, let's all just join the erudite. It seems like they got a good idea of what we should be doing. Triss notices that Christina and Kara Will's sister, leave the room, and Tris follows them to stalk them and listen to their conversations because she just does that all the time. What about asking someone what they think, Tris? What about going up to someone and just asking for something you want to know the answer to, instead of stalking people and like hiding behind stuff while they're talking? Can you imagine doing that? What a divergent freak show. This conversation is so goofy between Christina and Kara, talking about Will's death and talking about Tris. Christina is crying and she says she just can't handle Tris being here. She can't stop picturing what Tris did to Will. And Kara says, you know, don't think I'm callous, but that girl was probably scared out of her mind, certainly not capable of assessing situations cleverly at the time, if she was ever able to do so. Kara keeps like taking shots at Tris here and she gets like pissed off. Kara says to Christina, it's just that you have to be around Tris and I want to make it easier for you. You don't have to forgive her. Actually, I'm not quite sure why you were friends with her in the first place. She always seemed a bit erratic to me. I guess we know what people think about Tris from the outside is that she's just an attention freak. She says, anyways, you don't have to forgive her, but you should try to understand that what she did was not out of malice, it was out of panic. That way you can look at her without wanting to punch her in her exceptionally long nose. Jesus Christ. Tobias tells everyone that Kang is going to meet with a representative of Jeanine Matthews at 7 in the morning. And Tris hears Tobias explaining what's going on to the rest of the group, and it says that she frowns at him. Can I take a second to just talk about how many times Veronica Roth says that people frown in this book? Caleb frowns at him, disappears into a frown. I frown. I frown at Marcus. He spent most of his life frowning. I frown at him. Johanna frowns at him. She frowns. There's gotta be some synonyms, guys. There's gotta be some synonyms you can come up with, because every emotion can't be someone frowning. Like, I'm not understanding what the emotion is they're feeling when you just say that they frown every time. It's like constantly saying they're frowning. I frown. I frown. I frown. He frowns. I say this frowning. I frown. Frowning. I try to peel the metal disc away. I frown as I press a clean paper towel. Do something else. Say that you scowl or that you glower. That you glower? Glower. We have this goofy dialogue where everyone's asking Tris what an erudite would do in this position, because they're all like, you're the only one that has had an aptitude for erudite, and so what would the erudite do in this situation? Tris says, you all have functional brains last time I checked. You can think like the erudite too. And Marlene says, but we don't have special divergent brains. Come on, do your magic. Lynn says, there's no such thing as divergent magic, Mar, and if there is, we shouldn't be consulting it, says Shauna. It's the first thing she said since we sat down. She doesn't even look at me when she says it. She just scowls at her younger sister. Zeke says, Shauna. Don't Shauna me, she says, focusing her scowl on him instead. Don't you think someone with the aptitude for multiple factions might have a loyalty problem? If she's got an aptitude for erudite, how can we be sure she's not working for erudite? God, dumbest fucking logic I've heard all day. Well, no, I actually just heard what Jack Kang said a couple chapters ago. That's the dumbest. This is the second dumbest logic I've heard all day. You literally have half of the Dauntless on the other team. How can you be talking about like faction loyalty when half of you guys chose to go to the other side? Since when was whatever you got in your aptitude test supposed to define how you feel intrinsically more than like what? She says, I know I belong in Dauntless because everything I did in that aptitude test told me so. I'm loyal to my faction for that reason, because there's nowhere else I could possibly be. But her and you, I have no idea who you're loyal to, and I'm not going to pretend like everything's okay. So she like storms off after just dropping some dumb ass logic. I mean, the thing that really just doesn't make sense about what she's saying is that when you do the aptitude test, you don't have to pick whatever you were told to pick. You can go wherever you want. And just because you decide to go to a faction you didn't get the aptitude test for doesn't mean that everyone's gonna just start saying that you must have loyalty towards this other faction. And Shauna's being so divergent homophobic that I'm not surprised Uriah didn't want Tris to tell her. I am not surprised at all. So Tris is trying to explain to them that you don't need the erudite aptitude in order to like think about stuff. I don't know. The Dauntless are just like dumb now, apparently. They're just like cartoons. She says, it's not magic. You just have to ask yourself what the most logical response to a particular situation is. Everyone just gives her blank stares, and she says, seriously, if I were in this situation staring at a group of Dauntless guards and Jack Kang, I probably wouldn't resort to violence, right? So then she comes up with a plan, and then Zeke's like, see, this is why we need you to analyze the situation. If it was me, I just would have killed him. Which is funny, but they're all just dumb meatheads. Everyone's a dumb head of meat. I'm the head of meat. at dumb university. All right, chapter 20 out of 47. Chapter 20, Lynn makes a mashed potato sandwich. Tobias gets heckled again in the cafeteria. These dauntless just do not give a shit. They keep calling him coward. They keep hissing it at him. So then Tobias says distantly, "This needs to stop." He slips through the table and starts heading straight towards Marcus. And then he grabs Marcus by the back of his neck. He wrestles him from his seat. And then Tobias punches Marcus hard in the teeth. Tobias shoves Marcus towards the middle of the room. He shoves him to the ground and he presses the heel of his shoe to Marcus's throat. Marcus is smacking at Tobias's leg. Blood is streaming past his lips. And then Tobias takes his belt off and he spanks him like the bad boy that he is. He says, "This is for your own good." And then he starts just smacking Marcus with the belt. Just fucking humiliating him in front of everybody. Triss grabs Tobias and tries to get him to stop, and she notices that this was a calculated act. It's not like he's got a wild look in his eyes or anything. This guy is calculating. He drops a ring next to his father's face and he says, "My mother says hello. Condolences from the family." So this just brings us to another couple fight. Triss asks what he just did and he says, "It was necessary." And she says, "Necessary for what?" And he says, "Oh, you're feeling sorry for him now? Do you know how many times he did that to me? How do you think I learned the moves?" It did seem a little rehearsed, like Tobias had gone over the steps in his mind, recited the words in front of a mirror. He knew it by heart. He was just playing the other part this time. I am almost afraid of him. That's probably bad to say about your boyfriend. We both have a war inside of us. Sometimes it keeps us alive. Sometimes it threatens to destroy us. Anyways, she goes to the bathroom and talks to Marcus again because apparently she needs to have a conversation with both of Tobias's parents anytime something happens. This is what happens when you move too fast in a relationship and you guys become codependent. You know, you've got the age gap and there's the trauma bond, and it's just the foundation. You guys built a house on sand. You have built a house on dauntless sand. Marcus keeps being like, "I think the idea that you think that you can help me is like so silly. I don't know where you got the delusion that I'm useless," Triss says, "but that's what it is. And I'm not interested in hearing about it. All I want to say is that when you stop being delusional and start feeling desperate because you're too inept to figure this out on your own, you know who to come to." At the start of chapter 21, Lynn gives Triss a gun and puts it in the palm of her hand, and she's trying to figure out how she can use it again without freaking out. I've got a fan favorite line for you guys. She says, "I used a gun like this to defend my father and brother from simulation-bound dauntless. I used it to stop Eric from shooting Tobias in the head. It is not inherently evil. It is just a tool." While libertarian Triss is coming through the cracks again, guys, it's just a tool. You know, it's a person that does the killing. It's not the gun. The gun is just a thing that a person holds that can kill people. It's not like the gun is just a tool. Triss is looking in the mirror and she says she sees a flicker of movement. And before I can stop myself, I stare at my reflection. This is how I look to him. This is how it looked when I shot him. And then she starts moaning and she lets the gun fall on the ground. Triss and her friends right now are planning on spying on Jack Kang's meeting with Jeanine Matthews' representative or whatever. And she says, "I shouldn't even go." Well, I'm still going to. She just can't help herself, you know, even if it's going to risk her life and her friends' lives when she inevitably needs help from somebody. She is risking everyone's life. I don't care if you've got PTSD from killing your friend. Right now, I can't seem to care. Oh my God, there's another fight between Triss and Four. I can't keep doing the fighting, okay? This book has just become, you know, a shitty relationship. I'm skipping the argument, but Triss comes to realize that Tobias wants the Dauntless to ally with the Factionless, and he knows that the only way he can make that happen is to do it himself. And so he's really been trying to prove himself to the Dauntless, which I guess explains him beating the shit out of Marcus, because I guess that would earn their respect if everyone's making fun of him and they watch him spank his dad like a little baby boy on his bare butt, back, and balls. Oh God, there is this horrible quote from the fight where Tobias says, "Are you gonna eavesdrop or not?" Triss says, "What does it matter?" And Tobias says, "You're throwing yourself into danger for no reason again. Just like when you stormed up to fight the erudite with only a pocket knife to protect yourself." And Triss, the genius line here, says, "There is a reason, a good one. We won't know what's going on unless we eavesdrop, and we need to know what's going on. We won't know what's going on unless we eavesdrop, and we need to know what's going on." Clunky ass line. He crosses his arms. He's not bulky the way some Dauntless boys are. And some girls might focus on the way his ears stick out, or the way his nose hooks at the end. But to me, I'm like, I don't care what it means to you. The fact that you keep bringing up how other people might find him ugly doesn't make me feel like you like him more. It makes it feel like you're trying to act like there's some charity case going on. Someone's calling me on the phone. Hey. Okay, so that phone call happened and I never actually came back to continue recording. So now it's the next day. Anyways, the fight between Triss and Tobias ends with him saying that if she is going to be reckless, then he's going to come along. So Triss, For, Shauna, and Lynn are all hiding under the bridge where the meeting is going to take place. The way they explained it in the book was so confusing to me that I had to look up what bridge it is that they're talking about in Chicago, because I had to assume it was a real place. People think it's the DuSable Bridge in Chicago, but the details don't really line up. Uriah and Zeke aren't with them because they're like in buildings kind of watching out from above. Finally, Jack King shows up and meets with Max, who is the other Dauntless leader that was with Eric in the last book, and now he is kind of Jeanine's right-hand man. And while Triss hears him talk, she surprisingly frowns, guys. She said, I haven't heard Max speak much, but something about the words he's using and their rhythm sounds off. And Max just kind of big dogs Jack King in this conversation. He says that Jack doesn't have any leverage because Candor isn't one of the essential factions and Erudite is. Now Jack is pissed off and he says, you piece of scum, how dare. And Max cuts him off and says, now let's not get testy. And Triss is like, well, it's no self-respecting dauntless man would say the word testy or else he'd be a little bit gay. And so she comes to the conclusion that he's speaking like Jeanine. He is also under a simulation, and Jeanine is just using him as a vessel to communicate with the Candor. For a peace treaty, Max says that they have 3 requirements. They want them to release Eric, they want them to allow Erudite to fully search the Candor compound, and they want them to give them a list of all of the people who did not get injected with the simulation serum. So Jeanine is literally telling Jack that their plan is to inject everyone with simulation serum and control all of them. I don't know if Jack has realized at this point that that is what is happening, because apparently he thought that they had Candor's safety in mind, but obviously they do not. And while Triss is hearing their conversation, she sees a glass building and for some reason comes to the conclusion that Jeanine is hiding in that glass building, so she's close enough to be able to control Max. On my left, the river bends and a squat glass building stands at the edge. That must be where she is. She doesn't really have any evidence for this besides that it looks like a place she could be hiding, I guess. There actually is a glass building right next to the lake now. It's the Apple Store. So maybe that's where she's going. Maybe she's going to the Apple Store. And Triss says she was so busy thinking about Jeanine that she didn't notice that Lynn took out her gun and started climbing up the side of the bridge. Before it's too late, Lynn squeezes the trigger and she shoots Max in the chest in front of everybody. They don't explain like why she made the decision to do it, if she just got like fed up, but she threw away the whole plan of eavesdropping and decided just to kill this guy who isn't even the leader of their army. He's just like a guy that Jeanine's using. So this isn't going to fix anything. It just is going to put everyone in danger again. Big firefight starts. They all jump off the bridge and Triss is trying to get to the glass building and find Jeanine. And while this is happening, she hears a scream in the distance and Shauna was shot. So at the start of chapter 22, they see that Shauna is still breathing and they decide to pick her up and try to take her back to Candor headquarters. Triss says it's only a half-mile back, but with Tobias's grunting and Lynn's uneven breathing and the knowledge that Shauna is bleeding to death, it feels endless. I watch the muscles and Tobias's back. I'm like, dude, you're trying to save your friend. Enough about Tobias's back muscles. That has no like weight on what's about to happen to you and your friends. Oh my God, just let a little burp out while I said that. Guys, why do I keep getting interrupted while I'm trying to talk about Insurgent? I'm trying to get the video out before I go on vacation with my family next week. And so I've just been spending all day editing and reading and Insurgent is my life right now. So we get back to the Candor headquarters. We immediately jump into another fight between Tobias and Triss. I want to know exactly how much of this book is just arguments. They shouldn't have called it Insurgents. They should have called it arguments. Tobias says to Triss, I'm not going to pretend to know what's going on with you, but if you senselessly risk your life again, it's kind of hard because I do the same voice for everyone, but I don't like having to explain who's talking, so maybe I'll try out voices. I've had friends tell me that they want to like voice some of the characters next time, so maybe for the final, maybe for Allegiant, we'll bring in some real deal voice acting work. Anyways, okay, here's the argument. I'm not going to pretend to know what's going on with you, but if you senselessly risk your life again... I'm not senselessly risking my life. I'm trying to make sacrifices like my parents would have. Like, you are not your parents. You are a 16-year-old girl. How dare you! Who doesn't understand that the value of survival rests in necessity. Did I get that right? It lies in necessity. Necessity. Who doesn't understand that the value of sacrifice lies in its necessity, not in throwing your life away. And if you do that again, you and I are done. What the? You're giving me an ultimatum? No, I'm just telling you a fact. And logic. I mean, the voice acting thing's fun, but I like being able, I want to be able to stop and like, be like, what the hell? Why do you say that? Okay, the first thing I need to point out is that Triss is claiming that she's like making sacrifices when she decides to stay amongst battle, despite the fact that she is doing the group more harm than good every time she chooses to be a part of it. Her behavior is destructive, and it totally makes sense why he is that angry. But then Tobias responds and says, you're not your parents, you're a 16-year-old girl. And I feel like anyone else could kind of go there and say that, but I feel like as her boyfriend, who is an 18-year-old, you know, maybe we won't call him an adult, but he's definitely like portrayed in the book as someone who's fully grown up. You calling your girlfriend a 16-year-old girl makes it seem like you agree that she is not old enough or understanding enough to be able to make her own choices like an adult. But Tobias, you're trying to have sex with this girl. You haven't been not trying to. Definitely been pushing for it. But yeah, Tobias essentially gives her an ultimatum, and he's like, if you don't keep putting everyone's lives, including your own, in danger, then like we can't date. But if he hasn't already made that decision after however many like bad decisions she's been making, then like, I don't know, dude. I don't know how to help you. I truly think your girlfriend is a 16-year-old girl who also is grieving her entire family and life. If we could just like pull some strings, maybe with Kara and the erudite to get, you know, all of these people a therapist. Tobias says, I love Triss the Divergent, who makes decisions apart from faction loyalty, who isn't some faction archetype, but the Triss who's trying as hard as she can to destroy herself, I can't love her. Triss kind of knows that he's right, and then he touches his forehead and he says, I believe you're still in there. Come back. Triss has a conversation with Tori about what happened to her, how she became a spy. Anyways, the useful information we get from Tori is that she has a private laboratory on the top level of the erudite headquarters with insane security measures. The Dauntless all get together, and Tori basically says that because Eric is dauntless, that means that the Dauntless get to decide what happens to him and not Candor. Tori tells everyone that only dauntless leaders can perform an execution, and because all of their leaders became traitors, that means they need to elect a few new leaders. Everyone starts shouting out names, one of them being Triss, but she rejects the nomination because she thinks that she doesn't want to be so closely tied to the Dauntless because she feels like she's not dauntless. She's divergent, guys. So then the three leaders they elect are Tori, and then some like random middle-aged man with a ponytail whose name is Harrison. Hopefully he's truly middle-aged and he's not too old, because then you guys might have to... Anyways, ends up becoming one of the Dauntless leaders, and no one really makes fun of him or says that he shouldn't be a leader because he's a coward anymore, because he beat up his dad in front of everybody. So Jack shows back up to Candor headquarters after meeting with Max. I don't really know if the Candor like participated in the firefight when Max got shot. I feel like I must have missed something, because when I checked the text, it didn't say anything about Jack and the rest of the Candor. So he tells them they need to go to the gathering place to report whether or not they have an implant, and they also ordered all Divergent to be turned over to Erudite, and he says, I don't know for what purpose. So he's like, yeah, we're basically fucked, we're just gonna work with them. So then the Dauntless interrogate Eric in this room. They're all sitting around him to decide what they're going to do with this guy. Are we gonna execute him? Are we gonna spank him? And for some reason Eric singles out Triss and says that he wants her to list his crimes. And he said, since she's the one who stabbed me, clearly she's familiar with my crimes. I don't know what that is, and I also don't know why they wouldn't just be like, no, but they listen, and Triss is like, sure, I'll do it. Tobias is like, dude, leave her out of this. Eric says, why? Because you're doing her? Oh, wait, I forgot. Stiffs don't do that sort of thing. They just tie each other's shoes and cut each other's hair. I don't know, which is kind of a funny joke. The fact that this shitty faction abnegation, all they do is tie each other's shoes and cut each other's hair. That's funny. I don't know. But he does make a joke about them having sex, and that's not cool. Anyways, Triss listens to him and is like, whatever, I'll tell you your crimes, okay? You conspired with the erudite. You're responsible for the deaths of hundreds of abnegation. I don't know how I just pronounced it like that. You betrayed Dauntless. You shot a child in the head. You are a ridiculous plaything of Jeanine Matthews. And then he looks at Triss and stops smiling, and he says, do I deserve to die? And Triss says yes. Fuck it, yeah. I mean, I think so too, just for the record, guys. Even though I said the joke he said was funny, I'm not on Team Eric, he sucks. Anyways, she says yes, and Eric's like, fair enough. But do you have the right to decide that, Beatrice Pryor? Like, you decided the fate of that other boy? What was his name? Will? Everyone acts like that's some sort of gotcha, like she's like just as bad as a person as they are, because it's like she killed them because of you guys. How Eric's like, well, can you actually decide my fate if you killed a guy that was trying to kill you? Yes. Yes. I'm just sick of people acting like that was a mistake that Triss made and not the best choice. Like, sure, she could have shot him in the leg or something, but then he'd lay on the ground, he'd probably shoot her still. He's under brain control. Anyways, 4 is like, we have the right to execute you now. And he takes out 3 guns for each of the dauntless leaders, and then he puts a bullet in the gun in the middle, and then literally like moves them around like it's like cups, like he's some magician. He's like, oh. Which I can't imagine that looking cool. It almost seems like the lamest way to to fucking figure out who's gonna kill a guy is to be like, okay, let me just put the guns on the ground and then, ooh, don't look. Don't keep track of which one has the bullet in it. He moves it around like cups, and then Eric is like, I want 4 to kill me. He's like, I'm a leader of Dauntless, which he specifically isn't a leader right now. That's why this is happening. And all I want is for 4 to be the one who fires the bullet. And Tobias is like, why? It's like he's asking Santa for a gift. This isn't like prison where you get like your final meal, or like you get like a request because people feel bad that you're about to die. It's like, he was like, I want you to live with knowing that you usurped me. Like, what? You slurped him? The hell? Knowing that you usurped me and then shot me in the head. It's like, whatever. So then Tobias, being the badass that he is, just says there won't be any guilt. And then he'll say, well, you know, I have no problem doing it. And then Eric's just like heckling him, and Tobias just like puts a bullet in the gun. And then he just says, Eric, be brave. And then he just fucking kills him. He killed him. Eric's gone, guys. In memoriam to Eric. That's the biggest death in this book so far, right? All of the Dauntless leave the room, and some of them are just having a hoot. Like, it says at the front of the pack, Harrison is carrying Tori on his back like she's a little child. And she's like laughing and shit. It's like, you guys just like shot a guy in the head. But I mean, they are Dauntless. Worse has happened. Anyways, Jack King shows up, and he is like furious. They tell him that we fucking killed that guy, and he's like, are you kidding me? Like, we had him locked up here because he killed one of our people. Anyways, they're trying to leave, and Jack is like so pissed off, and he was like, didn't you come here to find allies? If you do this, we will side with Erudite, I promise you, and you will never find an ally in us again, you. And then Tori was like, we don't need you as an ally, we're Dauntless. That must be the only interaction between both our Asian characters. I don't want to focus too much on the fact that they're Asian. I seriously don't mean that in any... I just get excited when I see the representation. My humor is a little bit Dauntless, I guess you could say. I also think it's crazy that, like, yes, I see why Jack would make them enemies if they just killed his prisoner without him knowing, but him saying that, like, if you leave, then like we're gonna actually side with the other team is like kind of crazy. She shot you guys with serum. She's planning on mind controlling all of you. Like, you don't want to go on her side. She wants to control your minds. But obviously this hurts the relationship. Bye-bye to Jack, and all the Dauntless go back to the Dauntless headquarters. They say that they're going home. So they go back to the pit, and one of the Dauntless passes out paintball guns to everybody. So then Triss says, soon the hidden corners of Dauntless headquarters will be coated in multicolor paint, blocking the lenses of the surveillance cameras. No joke, their plan of moving back to Dauntless, but knowing that they have cameras surrounding their place, they're like, let's just go get paintball guns and shoot all of the cameras. That'll work. That's a good idea. That's a good way to ensure that no one can spy on us. So while this is happening, Zeke shows up and talks to Triss about what happened to Shauna and how she's doing after she got shot in the back. And I love this quote. Zeke says, she's going to survive it, but the nurse thinks she might be paralyzed from the waist down. And that wouldn't bother me, but how can she be Dauntless if she can't walk? Did you just say, and that wouldn't bother me? Why would that not bother you, that she's going to be permanently paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of her life? As I reread it, I'm like, maybe he's saying it from the point of view of like, and that it doesn't bother me that she's disabled, but how is she going to be a Dauntless if she's disabled? Like, we can't in good conscience have her being Dauntless if she's going to be paralyzed. Like, what the hell, guys? Like, I can't keep hanging out with her. Yeah, she's never going to be able to walk again. And, you know, Of course, that wouldn't normally bother me, but like, dude, what do you mean? He really thinks it's over. Triss is like, oh, she can do it. And he's like, she won't even be able to move around. And then she's like, yeah, sure she will. You can like push her in the wheelchair and stuff. And he's like, she's not going to want me to push her. She won't want me to lift her. She's not going to want me to carry her. Okay, dude. But like, what is the situation we're in? You know? What do you want to do? Kill her because she can't walk and she can't, so she's not going to be able to do stuff with you guys? Anyways, Zeke and Triss go to grab paintball guns and start shooting the cameras. She also mentions how it's easy for her to hold the paintball gun because it doesn't feel like a real gun. So it's not like, so she doesn't get PTSD and allergic reaction from it. I don't know why this like bothers me so much, but in the last book and in this book, they act like paintball guns are like Nerf guns. They're like, we're going to do a big paintball fight in the place we live and give guns to everybody. And, you know, they're all dauntless, they whatever. But there's families that live in the pit. It's not like they literally say, Marlene laughs and ducks under the glass. Zeke and I look at each other and then run after Marlene. She laughs as she sprints down the path, weaving through a crowd of kids. I shoot at her and hit the wall instead. I'm like, you're going to hit the kids instead. You know, you got to wear safety goggles when you play paintball because you could literally lose your eyesight if you get hit in the face with a paintball gun. It's gonna be a hell of a mess to clean up. Marlene fires at a boy near the railing. Hector, Lynn's little brother. He looks shocked at first, but then fires back, hitting the person next to Marlene. I'm like, isn't Hector like 11 years old? Popping sounds fill the air as everyone in the pit starts to fire at one another, young and old. The camera's momentarily forgotten. What do you mean young and old, guys? Have you ever gone paintballing? I mean, I'm a little bit of like a fucking loser, but it hurts. I don't want to do paintballing. I can't even do airsoft. It hurts. Like, why? I don't want it to hurt. At the beginning of chapter 25, Triss is in the cafeteria, sitting at the table that she used to sit at with Christina, Will, and Al, and she wonders how two of them are already dead. Christina sits across the table, as far from me as she can get. Zeke puts his tray down next to her. We're soon joined by Lynn, Hector, and Marlene. I see a flash of movement under the table and see Marlene's hand meet Uriah's over his knee. Every time she says that, I expect that a bunch of people are about to die because someone's going to get shot. But this time, it's Marlene's hand flashing to Uriah's knee. Lynn sees this and she gets super pissed off. She's like, I'm going to hurl with you two making eyes at each other all the time. And Uriah's like, what the hell? What are you talking about? And she's like, I'm not an idiot. Neither is everyone else. So why don't you just make out with her and get it over with? Someone's jealous, dude, that they're not getting some while the war is going on. Jeez. And then Marlene starts kissing Uriah and putting her fingers around his neck and stuff, whatever. Even Triss gets horny from this. Like, the peas fall off of her fork like she's a cartoon character. So then Four and Triss meet in private, and Four says that he has a meeting with someone and he wants Triss to come with him to help him read the situation and know whether or not he should trust whatever he's hearing. They're about to leave and they go through the fear landscape room, and Triss says, judging by the syringe on the floor, someone has been there recently. She asks Tobias about it and she's like, your knuckles are cut up and someone's been using that room. And so we find out that Tobias was the one using the fear landscape room, which means that he used it recently and then left the syringe, which I'm assuming is the needle. Like, he left the serum syringe on the floor like it's some kind of fucking crack house. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you going into this like room in the middle of the night and then doing the fear landscape and then just like leaving your shit on the ground? We need to have some sort of CDC regulations when it comes to this shit. Four says that he went into the fear landscape to see if anything changed, and he said it did, but the number is still the same. Four then, four now, baby. This guy cannot become afraid of something unless he finds something else to be afraid of first. He said that Marcus is still in the fear landscape, but he's not in there in the same way. He says Triss is now the woman that he is forced to shoot in his fear simulation. Even though he said four then, four now, he does mean that his fear landscape hasn't changed at all since he first went through it during his initiation. So obviously some things have changed based off the situation that we're finding ourselves in. You know, an 18-year-old boy is in the middle of war and has a lover, a young lover at that. He tells Triss that she is now in the fear landscape and she's the woman that he is usually forced to kill. Anyways, the people that Tobias and Triss are meeting have now arrived and gotten on the train, and it is none other than Edward and Evelyn. Evelyn? Huh? Is that you? Tobias is telling them that he wants to discuss an alliance, and Evelyn says that she has a certain set of conditions. She said that she wants a guaranteed and equal place in whatever government forms after erudite is destroyed, and she wants full control over erudite data after the attack. Triss asks what she wants to do with this data, and Evelyn says that obviously we will destroy it. The only way to deprive the erudite of power is to deprive them of knowledge. You can tell Triss really isn't into this and she feels off about it. And Evelyn says that she doesn't care who kills her, that she just wants Jeanine Matthews dead. Triss wants to explain to Tobias why her of all people have reservations about burning erudite to the ground. But then without even discussing with her, Tobias just agrees to the conditions. And then Evelyn tells Tobias, her own son, for the very first time, that Marcus convinced the rest of the abnegation to exile her. And Tobias is like, they exiled you? I thought you left. I don't know how she's like, I don't know why you're mad at me, Tobias. It's like, maybe explain to him that you didn't actually choose to leave him without taking him with you. I don't know. Triss and Tobias get in an argument, obviously, about this because Tobias did not consult Triss. I would love to do the whole argument thing and break it down, but I really, you know what? I'm going to do the argument. I don't care. I don't care. Why did you even bring me along if you were just going to make an alliance anyway? You didn't stop me, Tobias says. What was I supposed to do? Wave my hands in the air? I don't like it. It's a good point, okay? I'll give a point to Triss. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone, guys. Tobias says it has to be done. I don't think it does, Triss says. There has to be another way. What other way? You just don't like her. You haven't since you first met her. Tobias, why are you saying that if you initially brought her to suss your mom out? You've never liked my mom. You know, the mom that I told you I hated and that I didn't want anything to do with. You've never liked her, okay? You're biased. Like, that's the goo goo gaga fallacy. Like, dude, come on, you're losing points for me. He tells Triss that she hasn't liked Evelyn since she first met her, and Triss says, obviously I don't like her. She abandoned you. Tobias says they exiled her, and if I decide to forgive her, you had better try to do it too. I'm the one who got left behind, not you. Okay, and I understand where Tobias is coming from with this because Triss does constantly go behind his back to try to make herself a part of whatever's going on with his familial problems. I'm led not to want to believe your mom, not only because Veronica Roth keeps leaving like hints that your mom is not to be trusted, but also because of what we've seen in the book. She's just now bringing up to you that she was actually exiled when she needs leverage for this like agreement you guys are doing, so she doesn't want to be on bad terms. Like, Triss says this is about more than that. I don't trust her. I think she's trying to use you. And Tobias says, well, it isn't for you to decide. And Triss said, why did you bring me again? Oh yeah, so that I could read the situation for you. Well, I read it, and it gets a 2-star on Goodreads. I forgot about how your biases cloud your judgment. If I had remembered, I might not have brought you. Tobias, like, what are you talking about, dude? Your mom is giving you the woke mind virus. And also, dude, you're the one that has the bias. Like, it's your mom you're making the deal with, who you have a lot of emotional weight with. This whole thing is all biased. That's what everything is. This might be so stupid, but I just now realized that Marcus is the head of abnegation, Evelyn is the head of the factionless, and now Tobias is the head of the dauntless. And I feel like so many of their decisions are starting to get clouded by family lines. Okay, I'm back again on a different day at a different time. I think I've shot this video in like 10 different chunks. We're gonna talk about chapter 26, which is actually one of my favorite chapters in the book. I was sucked in. Let's just say that. I was sucked in. We start chapter 26 with Triss getting woken up by Christina. Obviously something's wrong because Christina wakes Triss up and takes her to the roof and says that they are running a simulation on just a few of the dauntless. Triss and Christina get to the roof and Triss sees that there are 3 figures standing on the ledge of the roof, all facing her. One of these being Marlene, one of these being Lynn and Shauna's little brother Hector, and then one of these being an 8-year-old dauntless girl. They stand still on the ledge, though the wind is blowing hard, tossing their hair over their foreheads, into their eyes, into their mouths. Their clothes snap in the wind, but still they stand motionless. Triss tries to get closer and Marlene opens her mouth and speaks. She says, I have a message for the Divergent. Her voice sounds flat. The simulation is using her vocal cords, but robs them of the natural fluctuations of human emotion. Triss steps forward and Marlene says, this is not a negotiation. This is a warning. Every 2 days until one of you delivers yourself to erudite headquarters, this will happen again. Marlene steps back and I throw myself forward, but not at her. Not at Marlene, who once let Uriah shoot a muffin off her head on a dare. Who gathered a stack of clothing for me to wear, who always greeted me with a smile. No, not at Marlene. As Marlene and the other dauntless girls step off the edge of the roof, I dive at Hector. Christina also jumps forward and grabs the 8-year-old girl, and once they pull the 2 kids back, Triss stands, her entire body shaking. She inches towards the edge of the roof and stares at the ground. The street below isn't lit very well, but I can see Marlene's faint outline on the pavement. Triss recalls the message at the end of the chapter saying, "I have a message for the Divergent. Every 2 days until one of you deliver yourself to erudite headquarters, this will happen again." And Triss says, "It will never happen again." So chapter 27, we go back down to the pit. And Triss says that Lauren reported that we missed some of the cameras in the initiate dormitories where Christina, Zeke, Lauren, Marlene, Hector, and Key, the little 8-year-old girl, were sleeping. That's how Jeanine figured out who the simulation was controlling. So guys, maybe next time we're trying to cover all of the cameras so that the erudite can't spy on us and kill us, maybe we should do something that's a little, more certain than paintball guns. How did you miss some of the cameras that are like in the places where people are sleeping? Triss says she has no doubt that Jeanine chose these young dauntless because she knew that the deaths would hit even harder. We do have a nice scene between Triss and Christina where Triss is kind of trying to sit alone by herself and Christina shows up. Christina said she had never seen that kind of simulation before from the outside, but after yesterday she says that Triss was right. They couldn't hear you, couldn't see you, just like Will. Christina ends up forgiving Triss, and then when they go back to the rest of the Dauntless, Triss has an interaction with Lynn where Lynn tells her, "The point is, don't think that saying this means anything about Marlene, but thank you for saving Heck." Why'd they name your little brother Heck? The heck? Uriah also tells Triss that Shauna found out that he's divergent and she doesn't want to catch it. So even though she just got shot in the back and she's like in a wheelchair now, she doesn't want to catch the divergent woke mind virus. Tobias shows up and Triss is just like not in the mood for it or whatever. She's like, "I'm not going to stare back at him. I refuse to stare back." All right, I'll stare back. Oh my god, dark eyes, a peculiar shade of blue, somehow capable of shutting the rest of the cafeteria out, of comforting me, and also of reminding me that we are farther away from each other than I want us to be. Triss says in her head that she has already made the decision that she is going to turn herself into the erudite to stop them from being able to hurt more of the Dauntless. Uriah is like, "I don't think any of us should turn ourselves in," and Triss is like, "No one?" And Uriah's like, "No, I think we should attack back." And then Triss says, "Yeah, let's provoke the woman who can force half of this compound to kill themselves. That sounds like a great idea." Triss and Tobias have another fight about whether or not she's going to turn herself in. I'm not going to do the argument. I know I'm always like, I'll do the argument. I'm not going to do the argument this time. At the end of the chapter, Tobias says to her, "Promise me that you won't go. For me. Do this one thing for me." And Triss says, "But if I don't go to erudite, who will? Tobias? It's the kind of thing he would do." I feel a stab of pain in my chest as I lie to him. "Okay. Promise," he says, frowning. The pain becomes an ache, spreads everywhere, all mixed together. Guilt and terror and longing. "I promise." And I get where Triss is coming from. All of this stacks up and finally becomes this thing that she's like, I can put a stop to this somehow. But why are we believing Jeanine when she says that if just one person turns them in, that they're going to stop killing people? They've been killing people this whole time. So that night, Triss tells Tobias that she promises she's not going to turn herself in. Tobias falls asleep. She immediately gets up. As Triss is about to leave, she says she wonders if erudite and dauntless will still be at a standstill then, waiting for one group to obliterate the other. I'm glad I won't have to see it. I don't know why she doesn't think that turning herself into Jeanine is just going to give her more information, to be more powerful than all of the people that she wants to keep safe. So Triss takes her way all the way to erudite headquarters. She turns herself in, and Peter is there to escort her. Triss gets taken to a small room that is about 6 feet long by 6 feet wide. It kind of starts to hit Triss now that she's like a prisoner and there's nothing she can really do. She says that if I can make a plan, I won't be so afraid. But there is no plan. There's no escape from Jeanine and no other escape from what she's done. In chapter 29, Jeanine shows up and is face to face with Triss for, I think, the first time in this book. Jeanine shows up with one guy that she doesn't recognize and also Peter, and she wonders how Peter was able to become her right-hand man, even though he very recently was added to the team. Anyways, Jeanine and Peter take her down all these long severance-ass hallways, and Jeanine takes her to a room that is just as large as the last one, but there's only one thing in it: a large metal table with a machine next to it and a camera dangling from above. Jeanine reveals to Triss that she's really happy that Triss was the one that turned herself in, because it says she has an aptitude for 3 different factions. And Triss is like, how did she know that I have an aptitude for 3 different factions? She wants Jeanine to tell her, and Jeanine says, all in good time. From your results, I have determined that you are one of the strongest divergent, which I say not to compliment you, but to explain my purpose. If I am to develop a simulation that cannot be thwarted by the divergent mind, I must study the strongest divergent mind in order to shore up all weakness in the technology. I always wonder how Triss, this like young, naive, kind of skillless character in these books, is just like the chosen one, and she's not really like humble or clear-headed or like good at it necessarily, but God has given her the brain of the chosen one, of Divergent Jesus. Jeanine says, therefore, for as long as possible, my fellow scientists and I will be studying you, and then at the conclusion of my study, you will be executed. The next day, Peter takes Triss to a room with an MRI machine in it where Jeanine is going to, I guess, scan Triss's brain and scientifically figure out what's going on up there. What makes her different than the rest of the people? Triss tells Jeanine that if she wants a scan of her brain, then Triss wants something back. If she's able to cooperate and not make things too hard, then Triss gets to see the MRI scan of her brain. And Jeanine says, whatever, you know, we're gonna kill you soon anyways. We'll let you see the MRI scans. She finishes doing her MRI scan, and Peter says he's gonna escort her to the room where she's gonna get to see what her brain looks like. Triss says that when we're in the hallway, Peter shakes his head at me. Triss says, what? And then Peter says, I don't know how you always manage to get what you want. Which is like kind of true, you know? She's always like, oh, I want to do this myself. I want to put the syringe in my neck myself. It's like she doesn't really have any leverage, and she kind of always just like, Jeanine's like, whatever, we'll let you do it. But Triss responds to Peter and says, yeah, because I wanted to get myself into a cell in Erudite headquarters. I wanted to be executed. And Peter's like, well, didn't you though? You just like came here on your free will. And yeah, he's kind of right. I mean, obviously there was like a threat, but Triss didn't make it super hard, you know? Anyways, Triss goes to the MRI room to go see the scan of her brain, and she sees it, and she's like, well, it looks like a brain, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't look any different than anyone else's brain. There's all of this fucking smart erudite dialogue about what the scan means. Okay, she's got a large lateral prefrontal cortex, and she's got a really small orbitofrontal cortex, I guess. Anyways, it's all kind of boring and doesn't mean anything, but Jeanine says that this does not merely indicate something about her behavior, but about her desires. She is not reward motivated, yet she is extremely good at directing her thoughts and actions towards her. It's just like a dumb personality test. There's really nothing super revealing in this. Triss is getting taken back to her room when she actually comes across Tobias, blood trailing down the side of his face and marking his white shirt with red. Tobias standing in the mouth of the furnace in which I will burn. Tobias and her have a very short interaction, and all he really says is, you die, I die too. I asked you not to do this. You made your decision. These are the repercussions. And Triss says that she thinks that he literally just came here to die with her. And Triss is like, Peter, can you find out like what they're going to do to Tobias? And he's like, why would I do that? And then he leaves. Chapter 30, Triss talks about this primal wolf inside of her. She says, I think we cry to release the animal parts of us without losing our humanity, because inside of me is a beast that snarls and growls and strains towards freedom, towards Tobias, and above all, towards life. And as hard as I can try, I cannot kill it. I've got 2 wolves inside of me. Boobs and ass. Triss is again escorted by Peter to another room, and she says to Peter, why are you constantly escorting me places? Isn't there a depraved activity you're supposed to be taking part in? Kicking puppies or spying on girls while they change or something? That's kind of funny, I think. And Peter responds, and he says, I know what you did to Will, you know. Don't pretend that you're better than I am, because you and I were exactly the same. I'm like, dude, why does everyone think that her killing Will makes her into an evil person? She was like defending herself against the bad guys. Peter takes her back to the execution chamber once again. They're like holding her down and strapping her down, and Triss is like, what the hell is going on? Jeanine, we agreed. Cooperation in exchange for results. And Jeanine says, this is entirely separate from the agreement. This is not about you, Beatrice. The door opens up and Tobias limps into the room. The reason for this is Jeanine is actually trying to get something else out of Tobias. The information of where the factionless are hiding, because she knows that this is possibly a group of people that could thwart her plans. And she says, rather than waste any more time, I thought I'd take the most logical approach. She says truth serum would be preferable, of course, but it would take days to coerce Jack Kang into handing some over, as it is jealously guarded by the Candor, and I'd rather rather not waste a few days. I'm like, don't you guys like invent your erudite? Don't you invent all the serums? How come Candor was able to invent a truth serum? Or did you invent it and then give it to Candor? And why do they have the only supply of it? And none of that really makes any sense, but basically she's like, I have to try something else. I have a different serum. And this serum is great. Triss doesn't know what it is, but then Jeanine says, when I was developing the Dauntless simulations years ago, we discovered that certain levels of potency overwhelmed the brain and made it too insensible with terror to invent new surroundings. Basically, it's like super scary. It's like haunted house serum, okay? She says that fear is more powerful than pain. She injects Triss with the serum, and Triss says that's when the screaming starts, and I can't think. Triss goes through this like horrible simulation where it's talking about all of these gross, unsettling things. I actually kind of enjoy the writing here because it really like leans into some gore horror shit. She says the scent of rotting flesh fills the air and I gag. This monstrous creature takes on a more definite shape. There are birds, crows with beaks as long as my forearm and wings so dark they seem to swallow all the light. She turns and sees Tobias in this simulation and he stabs himself in the stomach. All of these shadow birds turn their beady eyes on Tobias and swarm in a tornado of wings and talons pecking at his skin. I see his eyes through the whirling feathers and he is still awake. I have to say, I like the imagery there. I'm enjoying that. She wakes up and says that was not fear. That was something else. An emotion that should not exist. And apparently she was writhing around and freaking out enough where Tobias is like, fine, I'll tell you where the factionless houses are. God, as I read so much of this, I just have so many like questions about what they're gonna do in the movie. I've heard like bits and pieces here and there, but I think it would be funny to try to like predict in my movie video what I think is gonna happen. Finally, at the end of this chapter, Jeanine says, while you're here, get him in here. Bring him in. It's time. She tells Triss that she promised her full transparency with these procedures, so she feels like it's only fair that she knows exactly who has been assisting her in her endeavors. Who told Jeanine what 3 factions Triss had an aptitude for, and what their best chance was to get Triss to come here? Triss looks over her shoulder, and through the haze of drugs, she sees him. Caleb is the traitor. At the start of chapter 32, Peter escorts Triss to the showers, and on the way there, she passes by Tobias once again, and 4 steps away from Tobias, his entire body goes limp, catching his dauntless traitor escort off guard. The guard loses his grip on Tobias just for a second, and Tobias crumples to the floor. But then he twists around, lurches forward, grabs one of the guns from the dauntless traitor's holster, and he starts a huge firefight in the hallway. How many times are Triss and Tobias going to start firefights in these close encounters where they're most likely going to die? Tobias kicks him hard in the stomach. The dauntless in me admires his form. Perfect. And his speed. Incredible. Tobias grabs Triss and starts running away, and Triss says he runs, and even with my weight, he is fast. Idly, I think, how could he have ever been abnegation? He seems designed specifically for speed and deadly accuracy. Triss makes this guy seem like he is unreal. Instead of actually taking Triss out of the headquarters, he takes Triss to some random control room, and he basically tells her that he's not on some suicide mission. He's actually specifically here to figure out where the erudite control rooms are, so that when the dauntless and factionless actually attack the erudite headquarters, they know exactly where to go. Tobias tells Triss that according to one of their insiders, her execution has been tentatively scheduled for 2 weeks from today. So he basically tells her that she needs to hold on until then, right before they're going to execute her, and the dauntless and factionless will show up and be able to save her. Tobias mentions they have an insider, but then I'm like, if you have an insider in erudite headquarters, why did you need to break into erudite headquarters to figure out where the control rooms are? Why don't you just ask your insider? And basically, through all of her emotion, Triss is like, I'm tired. I want to die. Like, I can't wait 2 more weeks. I don't want to wait 2 more weeks. The guards finally show up and figure out where Tobias and Triss are hiding. Tobias gives over his gun, and the guards take them back to their holding cells. At the start of chapter 33, Triss wakes up in this room, and she's sitting next to Peter and next to her brother Caleb. Caleb tries to explain himself in terms of him working with Jeanine. He's like, oh, it's not that simple. But apparently it's really not that simple, because he really cannot like explain to her why he's doing this. I hate when characters don't just like cut to the chase and there's all of this misunderstanding and miscommunication when they have plenty of time to explain what's going on. Caleb just says, I did what I had to do. You think you understand this, Beatrice, but you don't. This whole situation, it's much bigger than you think it is. This isn't about the erudite. It's about everyone, all factions, he says, in the city, and what's outside the fence. It's a whole dumb argument. I'm sick of arguments. It ends with Caleb saying, evil depends on where you're standing. And Triss says, no matter where I stand, I'll still think mind controlling an entire city of people is evil. I'll still think delivering your sister to be prodded and executed is evil. And I think that's true. I agree with her. Even if there is something that we can't even understand on the outside of the fence that is going to determine what happens to humanity in this city, there's got to be some way to still make sure your sister isn't being beaten to death. Jeanine shows up and says she has some interesting findings to share with Triss. They say that she has an abundance of a particular kind of neuron called a mirror neuron. Long story short, they say someone with many strong mirror neurons could have a flexible personality, which means that this kind of person would probably have an aptitude for more than one faction. Triss goes back to her cell, she falls asleep, and then she wakes up once again to Tobias in her cell, waking her up. Tobias kills a bunch of erudite guards. He's shooting his way out of there. Triss says she's gasping for air, but she doesn't care now when she's finally escaping this nightmare. And when they finally get out of the headquarters and they're outside and Tobias says, come on, let's get out of here, Triss's stomach sinks. She realizes that Tobias pulled her to her feet with her right hand. The real Tobias would have remembered the wound in my shoulder. And she says, we can't get out of here because this is a simulation. She says, all I have to do now is wake up. And I know how. I've done it before in my fear landscape. I take a knife from my pocket, a knife that wasn't there a moment ago, and will my leg to be as hard as a diamond. I thrust the knife towards my thigh and the blade bends. So then Jeanine rips her out of the simulation and she's like, what is it that clues you into knowing that it's a simulation? Jeanine's super pissed off. She's like, this isn't about you. This isn't about me. It's about keeping the city safe from the people who intend to plunge it into hell. And Triss starts laughing like the Joker, a mad laugh. Triss says, I broke her. So then in chapter 34, Peter wakes Triss up to tell her that her execution has actually been scheduled for the next morning. And Jeanine had just basically decided to execute Triss and she's just going to run the tests on Tobias. So, you know, that sucks. Good job, Triss. Your plan went really well. Now you're gonna die. The next day, Peter escorts Triss to go get executed. She sees Tobias on the way there, but isn't able to do anything about it. They take her to the execution table. They start strapping her down. Triss says that she can hear her heartbeat, and soon, where that steady rhythm was, there will be nothing. And then rising from within me is a single thought. I don't want to die. Inside of her is boiling with this desire to live all of a sudden, and she is like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. No, I actually don't want to die. This whole book, I know I was talking about how I wanted to die. I don't want to die anymore. Jeanine grabs the syringe, plunges it into Triss's neck, and Peter leans over her and says, be brave, Triss. And Triss wonders, the last thought before she dies. She's like, why would Peter tell me to be brave? Why would he offer me any kind words at all? And then she hears the heart monitor stop beeping. But at the start of chapter 36, she realizes she's still breathing. Jeanine tells Peter to take her body to the lab for the autopsy or whatever. And on the way there, he takes a random turn. He actually picks Triss up off the table and Tobias shows up out of nowhere. Peter tells Tobias she's not dead. She's just paralyzed. It'll only last for about a minute. Now get ready to run. Peter takes him to a random room that actually takes you to the trash incinerator. And he says that he turned the trash incinerator off. And if they jump through the chute, it'll take them directly to the alley outside. They get outside and the three of them are trying to run away. On every corner they turn, they keep running into soldiers that are trying to kill them. They feel like the erudite know every step that they're going to take. And randomly, Tobias says, take the least logical route so that they won't find us. They keep trying to go different ways. And Triss says, then it occurs to me, the least logical thing to do is to stop running. So then they go in this random building and Triss is talking to Peter and she's like, why did you do it? You want me dead. Why would you just save me all of a sudden right before I was going to die? And this is the reason he gives Triss for why he saved her. I can't be in anyone's debt, okay? The idea that I owed you something made me sick. I would wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I was going to vomit. Indebted to a stiff? It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I couldn't have it. Someone shot me. The bullet was at head level. It would have hit me right between the eyes. And you shoved me out of the way. We were even before that. I almost killed you during initiation. You almost killed me during the attack simulation. We're square, right? No, dude, you literally assaulted her and tried to throw her off the edge of a cliff. And Triss just shot Peter in the arm and decided not to kill him, even though he was inside of the Dauntless headquarters trying to kill her and her family and Tobias and all of them. Tobias is like, you're insane. That's not the way the world works with everyone keeping score. And Peter's like, it's not? I don't know what world you live in, but in mine, people only do things for you for one of two reasons. The first is if they want something in return, and the second is if they feel like they owe you something. Anyways, Peter's a fucking idiot. The three of them go back to the abnegation compound, and they go in Tobias's old house, which is Marcus's house. And instead of seeing Marcus there, they see Tori, Harrison, and Evelyn all in the kitchen together. Marcus is nowhere to be found in his own home. Evelyn puts an arm around Tobias and touches his face with her other arm, pressing her cheek to his. And Triss sees that mother and son have reconciled, but she feels a little weird about it. Triss asks Tobias why everyone is camped out in Marcus's house, and he says that Evelyn kicked him out, said it was her house too, and he'd gotten to use it for years, so now it's her turn. It caused a huge blow up on the front lawn, but eventually Evelyn won. Peter is also here, obviously, because he came back with Tobias and Triss, and Edward actually shows up while this is happening and sees Peter for the first time since the last book when Peter stabbed him in the eye. Yeah, Edward's not mentally well. He like takes a fork and almost stabs Peter in the throat with it, and he's like, don't fuck with me. And we also learn that Drew from the last book, when he got kicked out of Dauntless, he tried to join the same group of factionless that Edward was a part of, and Edward apparently nearly killed him. And we also learn that this is why him and Myra broke up, because she was like too gentle to bear with how fucked up Edward was in the factionless. So Triss ends up going on a walk, and she goes to the abnegation headquarters and finds Marcus there. Marcus tells her that he wants to have a word with Triss about the information that Jeanine Matthews stole. And Triss tells Marcus that she knows this is about what is outside of the fence. And Marcus says, knowing that the information is about what's outside the fence is not the same thing as knowing what's outside of the fence. And Marcus says, no, I'm not going to tell you what it is, not because I don't want to, but because I have no idea how to describe it to you. You'll have to see it for yourself. I'm like, how can you not explain the concept of it to her? That's what I'm really curious about, is how everyone's like, well, I can't actually explain it to you. It doesn't make any sense. We are not from here. We were all placed here for a specific reason. A while ago, the abnegation were forced to enlist the help of erudite in order to achieve that purpose, but eventually everything went awry because of Jeanine, because she doesn't want to do what we are supposed to do. She would rather resort to murder. So what is he talking about, guys? I'm usually not trying to like predict what's happening. I'm just like reading what we have, but I can't help but wonder what it's going to be. And I have been sort of racking my mind about what I might predict is the thing. And my main prediction right now, and it has been since the last book, is that there are like monsters. And I know that that might sound crazy, but in the last book, I don't think I included it in the video because it didn't end up happening in the Divergent book. But Christina makes a joke to Triss when she asks what's outside of the fence. And Christina says it's monsters or makes some kind of joke like that. And that made me immediately be like, okay, I think there's like monsters or something outside of the city. But for Marcus to say that like they've been placed here almost like they're aliens or something. And I think it'd be cool if V-Roth took the extra step to like, you know, do something absurd and really unpredicted, like another species or something crazy out there. I don't know how she's going to be able to get the payoff to work with it being this thing that like can't even be verbally explained. Marcus says to Triss, I have told you enough to convince you that I'm not a liar. As for the rest, I truly find myself unequal to the task of explaining it to you. And I only told you as much as I did because the situation has become dire. And Triss says, suddenly I understand the problem. The factionless plan to destroy not only all the important figures in erudite, but all the data they have. They will level everything. And because Triss knows that her parents may have very well fought for this information to become public and they gave up their lives for her safety, she feels like she needs to know what this information is and she needs to carry out the mission that her parents originally sought out to do. So in chapter 38, Evelyn gets all the dauntless and the factionless together to finally tell them what the plan is to take out the erudite. Evelyn tells them that the power of erudite lies in their information, and so what they need to do is destroy that information. She explains that all the dauntless and factionless are going to split up into different groups. Some of them are going to tackle the main floor, but some of them are going to go straight up to the top of erudite headquarters to take out some of the key officials. Now, Triss has been suspicious of this the whole time, especially while Evelyn's speech is going on. She feels like there's something wrong. Everybody is chanting with Evelyn except for Triss, Christina, and also Tobias. Christina speaks up in their little group and she says, this doesn't feel right. And they kind of have this back and forth with Lynn where Lynn is like, yeah, remember when they put our minds under control and they forced us to shoot all these people without us knowing it? Like, yeah, we need to take these guys out. Christina's like, yeah, that's true. but isn't invading a faction headquarters and killing everyone exactly what the erudite did to the abnegation? And I'm like, yeah, dude, yeah, that is exactly what they did to you guys. That's why you need to do it back to them. I'm mostly on the side of Evelyn and the factionless and the dauntless because I'm like, you guys had your autonomy, your human autonomy taken away from you to do the most horrible thing you can do to someone, which is take their life away from them. I don't know if there is any remorse that I would have towards these people. But of course, in her head, Triss is wondering, is this information Marcus is talking about, is it that important that we need to stop it from being destroyed by the factionless and the dauntless? It's almost like this conflict triangle where they all want to take down Jeanine because they know that she is doing something wrong, but the dauntless want to destroy everything and tear it to the ground, while Triss wants to save this information and make it public because that is what her parents wanted to do. And Triss also feels surprised during this that the factionless agreed to work with the dauntless so easily, given how the dauntless have treated them in the past. But again, I feel like certain circumstances make things dire enough where it's like, yeah, the factionless are going to team up with these people who have treated them like shit for years because the safety of this entire city is at risk. Tobias tells Triss, you know, this is not a natural alliance, but we do have the same goal. And Triss says, okay, right now we do, but what happens when the goals change? The factionless want to get rid of factions and the dauntless don't. I'm like, maybe you don't. That doesn't mean all the dauntless don't want to get rid of factions. I'm personally on the side of like, tear down the faction system. The whole thing sucks. But Triss seems to think that dauntless all would like to remain dauntless and still have factions separating them from everyone else. Obviously, Tobias has hinted and basically says to Triss that he thinks that the factions should be disbanded. Tobias also tells Triss that she is in his group to, you know, go and murder all of the erudite, and she decides that she needs to lie to Tobias. She says that she still can't fire a gun, and she says risking her life doesn't seem so appealing anymore. And Triss says he thinks I'll be here, but I will be working against him, working with the father that he despises. This lie is the worst I have ever told. I will never be able to take it back. At the beginning of chapter 39, Triss and Christina are in Triss's old house. Triss says that it was the only place she could think of to go get ready, and Christina has no reservations about poking around. She has already discovered 2 textbooks wedged between the dresser and the wall, evidence of Caleb's erudite leanings. How many books does this guy have between his goddamn wall and his dressers and everything? This happened in the last book. Have they not cleaned out his room and figured out where all it's like he's stacking all these pornos around trying to hide them from his parents. Triss and Christina put on little dresses and they dress up like the Amity because they plan on going with Marcus to Amity headquarters. Anyways, Marcus shows up in a truck and Christina and Triss meet Marcus where he is going to drive them to Amity headquarters. When they arrive, they meet with the Amity leader, Johanna, and Triss tries to explain to her what's going on and what they need from her. Johanna says, what exactly do you want us to do? And Triss says, I didn't come here to ask you for help. I just thought you should know that a lot of people are going to die very soon, and I know that you don't want to stay here doing nothing while that happens, even if some of your faction does. Triss says, I also want to ask you if I can talk to the erudite that you're keeping safe here. I know they're hidden, but I need access to them. And Johanna says, and what do you intend to do? And Triss says, shoot them, rolling her eyes. Johanna says, that's not funny, and Triss says, sorry, I just need information. That's it. I'm like, what kind of joke is that to make while there is a faction trying to essentially wipe out, like, most of the city? It's horrible. Dark humor, dauntless humor. The next day, Johanna gathers all of the Amity to basically tell them that they need to decide whether or not they are about to be a part of this war. Jeanine says to her people, I am hoping that you will forgive me just this once for asking if we can reconsider our previous decision to remain uninvolved. This battle will not just be waged against the erudite dauntless army, but against erudite innocence and the knowledge they have worked so hard to acquire. We know better than any faction how essential their role in this society is, and they must be protected from needless slaughter, if not because they are human beings, then because we cannot survive without them. And when they finally finish the meeting, Johanna says, obviously it was difficult to find agreement, but the majority of you wish to uphold our policy of uninvolvement. So they basically decline what Triss is asking them to do with being involved in protecting the innocent erudite. Now Johanna speaks up again and says that it's not her wish to encourage division in the Amity community, but her conscience forces her to go against this decision so anyone else else whose conscience drives them towards the city is welcome to come with her. And sadly, she says that she understands if this means that she cannot be a part of Amity anymore, but please know that if I have to leave you, I leave you with love rather than malice. Johanna starts to walk towards the exit, and not many of them, but some of the Amity are walking out behind her, deciding to help Triss on her goal to stop all of this killing or whatever. At the end of this chapter, they also convince Kara, who is an erudite staying at the Amity compound, to help them out as well. Triss and Christina gave their plan to Kara to help them fix it and make it even better. She said that they wanted to put the erudite information on a disc, and that's like a horrible idea. The disc will end up breaking, or it'll be in the wrong person's hands. She says, I suggest you make use of the data network. They say, what the hell? And Kara glances at the other erudite. One of the others, a brown-skinned young man in glasses, says, go on, tell them. There's no reason to keep secrets anymore. Anyways, this young man ends up being introduced to us as an erudite named Fernando. Kara says many of the computers in the erudite compound are set up to access data from the computers in other factions, and that's how it was so easy for Jeanine to run the attack simulation from a dauntless computer instead of an erudite one. Basically, the erudite can go through any faction's data whenever they want. And the other factions don't know about this. This is like a Patriot Act ass fucking... I mean, Kara says it herself. She says this data network exists, and it is ethically questionable, but she believes that it can work to their advantage. Just as the computers can access data from other factions, they can send data to other factions. So they're like, let's go to the erudite compound and send all of the data we want saved to every other faction so it cannot be destroyed. Kara and Fernando decide to go with Christina and Triss because they're the ones that are going to be able to hack into the computers and get the information or whatever. Christina says, Kara, you do realize if you come with us, you might get shot, and no hiding behind us because you don't want to break your glasses or whatever. And Kara removes her glasses and she snaps them in half. All the glasses apparently for the erudite are, it's just a cosmetic thing. They say this in the last book that they all just wear glasses to look smarter. And also they tell Christina and Triss that they have useful gadgets for them too. Because they're erudite, we get all these futuristic gadgets that are going to help them out. Fernando grabs this box and he digs out a small round metal disc. And he said that it emits a signal that you can't hear, but it will cause glass to shatter. And then Kara takes out this black box made of plastic. It's a taser. She takes out a taser. She said, I made it so that the Amity would have a way of defending themselves without having to shoot people. The next afternoon, all of our main characters, including Johanna and some of the Amity and even some of the abnegation, Susan's brother Robert is there to help. They all gather to head towards the city and get there before the Dauntless are going to go attack. Triss is having a conversation with our new character Fernando, and she says, did you ever meet someone named Caleb? And Fernando says, Caleb, yes, there was a Caleb in my initiate class. He was brilliant, but what's the colloquial term for it? A suck up. Triss lies and says that she just met Caleb while she was in prison and she was just curious. And Fernando says that he wouldn't judge Caleb too harshly for listening to Jeanine. He says Jeanine can be extraordinarily persuasive to those who aren't naturally suspicious. I have always been naturally suspicious. When they finally get about 2 blocks away from where all the fighting is, Marcus pulls the truck into an alley and he turns off the engine. Fernando hops out of the truck bed and offers me his arm. Come on, insurgent, he says with a wink. Triss responds and says, what? Insurgent. Noun. A person who acts in opposition to the established authority, who is not necessarily regarded as a belligerent. And she tells Fernando, insurgent. It's perfect. When they finally head towards where all the fighting is, Triss says, my heart beats so hard it marks each second for me, but the rest of me is numb. I can barely feel the ground. I have never been this afraid before. Damn, you've been through a lot in the past few months. Like, and this is the most you've been afraid? You're more afraid now than you were, like, yesterday when you were strapped into the execution room and injected with the death serum. Christina and her lead the way, and she says that half a block from erudite headquarters, she comes to a sudden stop. Standing in 4 rows in front of us are a group of people, mostly dressed in black and white, spaced 2 feet apart, guns held up and ready. They don't want to have to go through this group to get into the erudite headquarters, but when they look up, they see that there is an abandoned building across from the erudite headquarters. Triss finds the 3rd floor classroom that looks into the erudite window, and it takes her 3 tries to open the right window. She leans out and looks down into the alley where all of the mind-controlled candor are with their guns, and she yells. They don't respond to any of it, so she knows that they don't respond to noise. They probably just respond to movement. Christina finds a ladder, and she takes it into the room to put it outside of the window and have it stretch over the alley so they can climb across the ladder to get into erudite headquarters. Christina's taking the ladder to bring into the room, and she turns too soon and smacks it into Fernando's shoulder. She says, "Oh, sorry, Nando." The jolt knocked his glasses askew. He smiles at Christina and takes the glasses off, shoving them into his pocket. "Nando," I say to him. "I thought the erudite didn't like nicknames." And Fernando says, "When a pretty girl calls you by a nickname, it is only logical to respond to it." They take the metal glass breaking disc and they throw it across and break all of the windows on the other side where the erudite headquarters is. At the same time this happens, all of the candor that are being mind controlled below twist and they fire up into the sky. When Triss drops into a bathroom in the other side where the erudite headquarters is, a woman comes out of the stall with toilet paper stuck to her foot. Does she actually have toilet paper stuck to her foot? Yeah, she does. I don't... Such an unnecessary cartoonish detail to add to it. Now the lady is like, "Don't shoot!" And Triss remembers that she's dressed like the erudite, and so she puts the taser on the edge of the sink and she says, "My apologies. I'm slightly edgy with everything that's occurring. We are re-entering in order to retrieve some of our test results from Laboratory 4A. And the woman's like, "Yeah, that's a dumb idea, but like, I'm not gonna stop you." Anyways, Triss turns back. Everyone else starts coming across the ladder, coming into the room. Christina climbs the ladder. It's totally fine. Triss says Fernando will be the last, and he'll be in the same position I was, with the ladder secured from only one side. I move closer to the window so I can tell him to stop if I see the ladder slip. Fernando, who I didn't think would have any trouble, moves more awkwardly than anyone else. He has probably spent his entire life behind a computer or a book. He shuffles forward, his face bright red, and holds the rungs so tightly that his hands turn blotchy and purple. Halfway across the alley, I see something slip out of his pocket. It is his spectacles. I scream, "Fernand!" But I am too late. The spectacles fall, hit the edge of the ladder, and topple to the pavement. In a wave, the candor below twist and fire upward. Fernando yells and collapses against the ladder. One bullet hits his leg. I didn't see where the others went, but I know when I see blood drip between the rungs of the ladder that it was not a good place. Fernando stares at Christina, and she surges forward through the window, about to reach for him. And he says, "Don't be an idiot. Leave me." And it's the last thing he says. Rip Fernando, gone too soon. He was my favorite character. They leave the bathroom and go into the erudite hallway, and apparently it is more active than Triss has ever seen it. People in erudite blue sprinting back and forth, shouting things at each other like, "They're at the front doors, go as high as you can, they've disabled the elevator, run for the stairs." And Triss realizes that she forgot her taser in the bathroom, so she is once again unarmed. The group finally makes it inside of a control room, and behind Triss another door opens, and she hears Caleb, and he says, "What are you doing here?" Caleb is pointing his gun at Triss, and he says, "I'm here to stop whatever you're doing." And Triss says, "We're here to save the erudite data that the factionless want to destroy. I don't think you want to stop us." Caleb said, "Why would you bring Marcus if you weren't trying to find something else? Something more important to him than all the erudite data combined?" And Marcus is like, "Jeanine told you about it? You? A child? She told you the crazy information that I'm trying to save everyone from that I can't even explain to Triss?" And Caleb said, "She didn't tell me at first, but she didn't want me to choose a side without knowing the facts." Caleb says, "My sister doesn't know what she's getting into. She doesn't know what it is that you want to show everyone. Doesn't know that it will ruin everything." And Marcus almost starts yelling at him. He says, "We are here to serve a purpose. We have completed our mission, and it is time for us to do what we were sent here to do." I'm like, can you guys stop talking in fucking code and just say what it is you want to say? What's gonna ruin everything if I learn that there's a big monster? And Caleb said, "We were not sent here. We have no responsibility to anybody but ourselves." Caleb is trying to get Triss on his side. He says, "You need to trust me, Beatrice," his chin wobbling. And Triss says, "After you helped her torture me, after you let her almost kill me?" And Caleb's like, "I didn't help her torture. You certainly didn't stop her. You were right there. You just watched." And Caleb's like, "What could I have done?" I'm like, dude, just... Triss is like, "You could have tried, you freaking coward. You could have tried and failed because you love me." Anyways, Caleb's like, "You guys aren't going to find what you're looking for here. This is public computers. Like, she's not going to just put the information on a public computer." And Marcus is like, "Where's she keeping it?" And Caleb's like, "I'm not going to tell you." And Triss is like, "I think I know where the information is," because Tori told her about that private laboratory that Jeanine had and how it has insane security measures. Anyways, Marcus picks up Caleb's gun and he turns it in his hand and he swings and strikes Caleb under the jaw and knocks him out. And Triss says, "All I can see when I look at him is a belt swinging towards Tobias and the butt of a gun slamming into Caleb's jaw. I don't care that he hurt Caleb. I would have done it too. But that he is simultaneously a man who knows how to hurt people and a a man who parades around as the self-effacing leader of abnegation suddenly makes me so angry I can't think straight. So Marcus doesn't give a shit. He's like, your brother's a traitor. He deserved worse. There's no need to look at me that way. And Triss snaps at him. She says, shut up. She shoves him into the wall and she says, I hate you and you know that. I hate you for what you did to him. And I'm not talking about Caleb. And while I may not shoot you myself, I will definitely not help you if someone tries to kill you. So you better hope to God we don't get in that situation. And Marcus just stares at her, apparently like indifferent about it. So Kara stays back in the main control room to send all the other information to the other factions. Triss, Christina, and Marcus decide to head towards the top floor to get to the laboratory. When Triss throws the door open to the stairwell, a group of erudite, including children, are sprinting down the stairs. She clings to the railing and forces her way through them with her elbow, not looking at their faces like they're not human, just a wall of mass to push aside. I'm like, damn, you're just like elbowing kids in the face? They get to the top of the stairwell and they run into who other but Edward, who is working with the factionless and the dauntless to kill all of the erudite. Edward sees all of them and he says, look who it is. That's a strange outfit for someone who's supposed to despise erudite. I thought you were supposed to be at home waiting for your boyfriend to come back a hero. And as Eric is grabbing his gun, Triss leaps towards him and grabs his wrist. And Eric pulls the trigger as Triss grabs his wrist. He wrenches Triss to the side and fires again, hitting Christina in the leg. Gasping, Christina draws her gun and shoots, and the bullet hits Edward in the side. Christina says she's fine. It didn't hit the bone, just the side of her leg. And she decides to stay there to make sure that Edward doesn't leave while Triss and Marcus keep heading up the stairs to get to the laboratory. At the start of chapter 44, Triss and Marcus make it to the top of the stairs and they come into this next room that is a really wide room, but it's not deep. It's got blue tile, blue walls, blue ceiling, blue room. Okay, it's erudite, so the room is blue. And as they step into the room, they see two separate doors, one on the left and one on the right, and Marcus and Triss have to decide what doors they're going to go into and they're going to separate. Triss says she puts her hand on the door handle and there doesn't seem to be a lock. When Tori said there were insane security measures, I thought she meant eye scanners and passwords and locks, but so far everything has been open. Okay, this part's stupid, just like prepare. Triss goes into a separate room where all of these lights shine on her and she's basically blinded, and she hears a voice that says, Beatrice Pryor, second generation, faction of origin, abnegation, selected faction, dauntless, confirmed, divergent. And Triss says, how does this room know who I am? And what does second generation mean? Now, I don't want to get too into speculation, you know, I'm trying to really get to the end of this book, but I still think that something is going on where all of these people were placed in Chicago. It's not like the people that originally lived in Chicago or whatever. And maybe Triss's parents were the first generation of people like who actually lived there. We only ever hear about people's grandparents. So maybe the grandparents were brought there. Then Triss's parents were born in the factions that they were in. And then now Triss is this like a second generation dystopian Chicagoan. Triss opens her eyes and suddenly she is in some kind of simulation where she is inside of the Dauntless training room, inside of the circle where she had to do all of her fights. She hears a voice that says, intruder, you will have 5 minutes to reach the blue door before the poison kicks in. Triss starts towards the door and someone appears in her path. It's Triss. It's anti-Triss. It's evil simulation Triss. And basically Triss has to fight herself, which is like, there's always a boss battle where you gotta fight yourself. And this bothers me so much for some reason that Jeanine is like locking her secret laboratory behind all these security measures, but it's like simulation tests you have to go through. I'm like, why don't you just have like a gun that shoots the intruder? It's like, why don't you just lock her in the room and fill it with poison? Why are you like having her complete a challenge that will give her access to Jeanine? And also, why they give her like 5 minutes? That seems like so much time. So Triss is like trying to figure out how to get to the door, but other Triss is like doing everything she's doing. She says she breaks into a run, intending to swerve around her, but she's ready for me. She grabs my wounded shoulder and wrenches me to the side. I have to think of a way to defeat myself. How can I be a better fighter than myself if she knows the same strategies that I know and is exactly as resourceful and clever as I am? I'm like, I don't really know if I'd say you're very resourceful or clever, Triss. So, I mean, maybe this will be easy, actually. I don't know. This part sucks. She's like, the second I want something, she also wants it. How am I supposed to beat myself? The logical puzzle. In a fight between two perfect equals, how can one win? The answer. Someone can't. Therefore, we must not be perfectly equal. So she says, what is different between the two of us? And she realizes we have different goals. I have to get through that door. Other Triss has to protect it. And she sprints towards a table where she says a moment ago it was empty. But she knows the rules of simulations and how to control them. So a gun appears on the table as soon as Triss thinks about it. Like, you can do whatever you want. You can make yourself invincible, I thought. Or just earlier you were in a simulation and you made your leg really hard. But at the same time, as she spawns the gun, evil Triss also gets a gun. But when she reaches and feels the weight of the gun and its smoothness, she forgets about other Triss. She forgets about the poison. She forgets about everything. Across the room, it's no longer Triss's double that she sees, but it's Will. And this isn't part of the simulation. Triss specifically says that this is part of the poison seeping into her brain that Jeanine is like putting in the room or whatever. So this is a hallucination within a simulation. Ugh. I had no idea when getting into Divergent that it would be all about simulating things, first of all, but also that it would like, there would be all these different serums and all these different sides to the arc. It's a lot more than I thought, okay? And so Triss says, I'm sorry, and she says she does the one thing her double is unable to do because she is not desperate enough, and Triss fires the gun. Okay, start of chapter 45. Triss goes into the next room after defeating the anti-Triss. The next room is twice as big as the first one, and it is also blue, but paler. Jeanine acts like a cartoon supervillain. Like, she walks in this room, there's all these big pictures of all the Divergent, there's like chemicals listed next to their name, and then they're all crossed out with red markers. Triss is like, this must be where Jeanine develops the simulation serums. I'm like, no shit, dude. She couldn't have laid it out any more obvious than that. But she hears voices ahead of her, and she hears Tori's voice. My brother's name. I want to hear you say it. And Jeanine said, I didn't kill him. And Jeanine says, the reasons for my actions are beyond your understanding. I'm willing to make a sacrifice for the greater good, something you have never understood, not even when we were classmates. They were roommates. Well, they weren't roommates. They were classmates. They were classmates. Tori is not screaming, but wailing, the whole of her grief escaping through her mouth. She walks in the room and Jeanine stares at her, but Tori doesn't even hear Triss, doesn't even notice. She says that Tori's face is red and tear-streaked and her hands are shaking. Triss says she has no confidence that she can find the video file on her own. If Jeanine is here, I can get her to find it for me, but if she's dead, and Triss screams out, she says, no, Tori, don't! But Tori's finger's already over the trigger. Triss launches herself at Tori as hard as she can, her arm slamming into her side. The gun goes off and she hears a scream. Jeanine is slumped against the wall, blood soaking her leg. Leg, I remember, and punched Tori hard near the bullet wound in her thigh. Tori sinks her teeth into Triss's hand. She says it's a different pain from any blow I've ever received, different even from a bullet wound. Triss says I yank my hand from between her teeth, my vision going black at the edges, and with a lurch, smack my hand around the handle of the gun. How many times is she gonna say that she sees her vision go black around the edges, or there's spots around her vision? That's another thing. Like, there are so many things in these books that I have never noticed with other authors across, you know, a series where they just keep using the same ways to describe things the whole time. It makes everything feel like we're getting the same reaction from it rather than having a new experience. It's like, okay, well, Triss is seeing black at the edges again. She's like, she feels pain. Like, now it doesn't mean anything to me. Triss says to her, I can't explain it now, but I'm asking for you to trust me, please. There is something important, something only she knows the location of. And Jeanine says, that's right. It's on that computer, Triss, and only I can locate it. If you don't help me survive this, it will die with me. Which seems like she's kind of lying, you know? It seems like she's kind of using that as leverage to make sure Triss doesn't kill her, which she obviously is, but is she telling the truth? Tori says she's a liar, and if you believe her, you are both an idiot and a traitor, Triss. And Triss says, I do believe her. I believe her because it makes perfect sense. The most sensitive information that exists, and it's hidden on that computer, Tori. Please listen to me. I hate her as much as you do. I have no reason to defend her. I'm telling you the truth. And despite the fact that Triss does believe there is this, like, greater thing that she doesn't even know about, but it just matters that much. If I was in this situation, I would truly be like, these aren't people who have a reason to tell you the truth. You know, they've got every reason to lie to you to make sure that they stay alive and they continue doing the shit that they're doing. So even though I think Triss probably is right because, you know, she's the main character and all that shit, I would not be on her side if I was truly in this situation. I'd be like, just fucking kill Jeanine. Tori is silent. I think for a moment that I've won, that I've persuaded her, but then she says, nothing is more important than her death. And Triss says, if that's what you insist upon believing, I can't help you, but I'm also not going to let you kill her. And Tori says, I am a dauntless leader. You don't get to decide what I do. And Tori grabs a knife out of her boot. She lunges forward and she stabs Jeanine in the stomach. I see Tori's gritted teeth and I hear her murmur her brother's name, George Woo. And then I watch the knife go in again and Jeanine's eyes turn into glass. And that's the end of chapter 45. I think that's the funniest thing ever. With gritted teeth, Tori is stabbing Jeanine and going, George Woo. This is for George Woo. Wow, Jeanine is dead, guys. She's gone. At the start of chapter 46, Tris says, all the risks I took to get here, conspiring with Marcus, asking the erudite for help, crawling across a ladder 3 stories up, shooting myself in a simulation, all the sacrifices I made, my relationship with Tobias, Fernando's life, my standing among the dauntless were for nothing. I'm like, Fernando? You just met Fernando like 2 seconds ago. I think that's a lot different than the rest of the risks you took with, betraying Tobias. A moment later, the glass door opens again, and Tobias and Uriah storm into the room as if they're prepared to fight. Tori says she's a traitor. She just almost shot me to defend Jeanine. And Uriah's like, Tris, what's going on? Is she right? Like, why are you here? But it's Tobias that gives her this look that brings her more pain than anything else. She says to Tobias, you know why I'm here, don't you? And Tobias said, we found Marcus in the next room, caught in a simulation. You came up here with him. I trusted you, he says, his body shaking with rage. I trusted you, and you abandoned me to work with him? Tris says no. He told me something, and everything my brother said, everything Jeanine said while I was in erudite headquarters fit perfectly with what he told me. And I needed to know the truth. And Tobias says, the truth? You think you learned the truth from a liar, a traitor, and a sociopath? And Tris says, I think, and she has to pause and take a breath because she realizes she didn't convince Tobias of anything. You think she's going to go on the defense because she's the one that turned away and lied to Tobias, but she says, I think that you're the liar. You tell me that you love me, you trust me, you think I'm more perceptive than the average person. And then the first second that belief in my perceptiveness, that trust, that love is put to the test, it all falls apart. So you must have lied when you told me all those things. You must have, because I can't believe your love is really that feeble. She says to Tobias, I am exactly who you think I am. And right now I'm telling you that I know this information will change everything we have done and everything we are about to do. Tobias doesn't even look at her, and Tori tells Uriah to take Tris downstairs and she's going to be tried along with all the other war criminals. Tris says for the first time, the Dauntless's disregard for age does not seem like an opportunity. It seems like the thing that will condemn me. They will not say, but she's young, she must have been confused. They will say, she's an adult and she made her choice. I'm like, is she an adult though? We just had Tobias tell her that she's just a 16-year-old girl. Maybe, guys, just maybe we should raise the age for the choosing ceremony to 18 years old. Or maybe even better, abolish the whole goddamn thing because it's a bad idea and it sucks. So they're going down to the lobby and Therese, one of the other Dauntless, says, give me your gun, Uriah. Someone needs to be able to shoot potential belligerents and you can't do it if you're keeping her from falling down the stairs. And then Uriah surrenders his gun without question and Tris frowns, guys. She frowns. She says, Therese already has a gun, so why does it matter for Uriah to give his? But I don't ask. I'm already in enough trouble as it is. When they get to the bottom floor, Uriah mutters something about how they had to shoot so many people just to get into the building. He obviously isn't fully comfortable with what the factionless and the dauntless are doing. Tris gets taken to this room where all of the erudite who didn't get away and the dauntless traitors who survived are all basically being held prisoner there. And she finds Christina there, and she also sees Caleb there sitting near the back. Christina and Tris are talking when Tobias walks into the room and walks right over to Caleb and grabs his arm and wrenches him to his feet. And Tobias says, I want you to disarm the security system for Jeanine's laboratory so that the factionless can access her computer. Tris says, and destroy it, I think. Which makes me think, I don't want to spoil anything, but I have a feeling that maybe Tobias isn't going to go and destroy the information. And Tris is telling Christina about the simulation that she was just a part of. And Christina wonders, how did Tori get past the simulation? She's not divergent, and she thinks maybe she is. Her brother was, and after what happened to him, she might never admit it, no matter how accepted it becomes. Tris hears a yell, and she peers around the crowd to see where it came from, and Uriah is yelling, Lynn! Two Dauntless carry Lynn in on a makeshift stretcher. A doctor peels Lynn's shirt back from her stomach, and they see a bullet wound that is just a round red circle in her skin. But surrounding it is what looks like a bruise. And And Tris says she's never seen a bruise that dark. The doctor purses her lips, and I know that Lynn is as good as dead. And Uriah is yelling at the doctor to fix her, to save her life. And the doctor says her condition is far too advanced. If you had not insisted upon burning everything that came into your path, I could have tried, but as the situation stands, trying would be worthless. Tris and Uriah are standing over Lynn, and it says that she doesn't seem to notice Tris. She just focuses on Uriah. She says, I'm just glad I didn't die while under the simulation. And Uriah says, you're not going to die now. And she says, don't be stupid. Yuri, listen to me. I loved her too. I did. And Uriah said, you loved who? And Lynn said, Marlene. Yeah, we all loved Marlene, Uriah says. And Lynn says, no, that's not what I mean. Oh my God, not the gay reveal before death. Oh God. Still, it takes a few minutes before her hand goes limp in mine. I guide it across her stomach, then take her other hand from Uriah and do the same to it. Tris says to Uriah, you should tell Shauna and Hector. All right, guys, I am at chapter 47, which is the last chapter in Insurgent. I have not read the final chapter yet, so next time you see me, we're going to wrap this thing up, baby. Thank God. Okay, so I'm reading the last chapter of Insurgent, and I kind of got to a point that felt like something big was about to happen. So let's start talking about what I've read so far in the chapter and wrap this thing up. So after Lynn's unfortunate passing, Tris sees Tori and Harrison come into the lobby with one of the dauntless carrying Jeanine's body, and he puts her body on a big table in the middle of all of the dauntless and the factionless. As this happened, Johanna Reyes, the leader of the amity, comes into the building and comes face to face with Tori and Harrison, I guess, with his weird ass ponytail. Tori says, I saw you and your little band of peacekeepers getting in everyone's way. I feel like Tori's supposed to be like a good guy still in the book. Like all of her motives have been understandable, even though her brother's death sort of drove that rage or whatever. But then it almost seems like the moment that she is against Tris, even if they believe in different things, she's like acting like a villain now all of a sudden. Johanna says, yes, that was intentional. Tris thinks, color fills her cheeks, and I think it again, that Johanna Reyes might still be beautiful. Except now I think that she isn't just beautiful in spite of the scar. She's somehow beautiful with it. Like Lynn with her buzzed hair. And Tobias with the memories of his father's cruelty that he wears like armor. Like my mother in her plain gray clothing. That might be one of my least favorite lines of the book. I feel like what Tris is doing is naming all these things that make all of these people at first glance unattractive. It's like, maybe the scar doesn't make her that ugly after all. Maybe Lynn's buzzed hair isn't so gay after all. Maybe it actually does suit her. And Tobias, maybe the memories of his father's cruelty that he wears. It's like she's going past the physical realm at this point. I thought she was gonna be like Tobias with his hooked nose and his big ugly ears and the way his eyes blink at the wrong time and his teeth that stick out the wrong way. And then they just have some like sexy millennial guy playing him. And Tori asks Johanna if she can carry a message back to the amity. She says, tell them that a new political system will soon be formed that will exclude them from representation. This, we believe, is their punishment for failing to choose a side in this conflict. They will, of course, be obligated to continue to produce and deliver food to the city, but they will be under supervision by one of the leading factions. Tori, like, how can you just kick people out, even people from amity that would have wanted to fight? How are you just gonna force them with like military like what? Tori, what happened? I thought we were cool. I thought we were on the same page. I can see how Harrison might have not really, I never fucked with Harrison, to be honest, I never thought he was cool. I always thought he was a weirdo. But Tori was my sister. Well, she was George Woo's sister, actually. And in response, Johanna surprisingly just says, is that all? Tori says yes, and then Johanna responds and says, fine. I'm gonna go do something useful. I don't suppose you would allow some of us to come in here and tend to these wounded. And Tori just gives her a look, and Johanna says, I didn't think so. Tori, if you think Jeanine was a bad influence over her people, you have to believe that there is still good and love. I love this whole book. Like, I've just been so serious about the logic of like behind some of these conversations. What do you call that, guys? What is that interest? Is that sociology? Johanna said, do remember though, that sometimes the people you oppress become mightier than you would like. And she turns and she walks out of the lobby, and then Tris like decodes this mysterious message for us. She says, something about her words hit me. I'm sure she meant them as a threat. and a feeble one at that, but it rings in my head like it was something more. Like she could have easily been talking not about the amity, but about another oppressed group, the factionless. It's like, spell it the fuck out for us, Tris, because I was too dumb to maybe understand that. And as I look around the room at every dauntless soldier and every factionless soldier, I begin to see a pattern. Christina, the factionless have all the guns. Christina looks around and then back at me, frowning. I'm going to start frowning if I hear that one more time. And then if you guys didn't connect this, Tris says, in my mind, I see Therese taking Uriah's gun when she already had one herself. I see Tobias's mouth pressed into a line. Like, can you just let us notice the foreshadowing? At the end, you gotta spoon feed it to everybody who didn't hear every goddamn thing. Okay, then all of a sudden, Evelyn emerges into the lobby, you know, just as Tris thinks about the factionless. Cue Evelyn, bring her in. Evelyn takes her gun out and shoots the painting of Jeanine Matthews. And everyone quiets down and she says, I know that you're all wondering what will happen next, so I am here to tell you. The faction system that has long supported itself on the backs of discarded human beings will be disbanded at once. We know this transition will be difficult for you, but... And Tori says, we? What are you talking about disbanded? What I'm talking about is that your faction, which up until a few weeks ago was clamoring along with the erudite for the restriction of food and goods to the factionless. If you guys didn't remember that from the last book, everyone was mad that abnegation were giving food to the factionless. A clamor that resulted in the destruction of the abnegation will no longer exist. Also, I'm realizing in the last book, what everyone was hating on Tris's parents for giving food to the factionless when they thought that they were like keeping it for themselves. That was really the erudite behind the scenes trying to keep the factionless from eating food so they physically would be weaker and wouldn't be able to fight against the restrictive government. Reading analysis moment, dude, I'm growing as a reader. It's like elementary school all over again. And Evelyn smiles and says, and if you decide to take up arms against us, you will be hard-pressed to find any arms to take up. Tris says, I watch as each factionless soldier holds up a gun. Factionless are evenly spaced around the edge of the room, and they disappear into one of the stairwells. They have us all surrounded. It is so elegant, so clever that I almost laugh. Yeah. And Evelyn says she knew that they would have been conditioned to cling to the faction system like it's their own mother. And that we, the factionless, would have to help ease you into this new era. Tori's like, ease us? And Evelyn says, I have not been starving for more than a decade just to give in to a dauntless woman with a leg injury. While this happens, behind her, the door to the stairwell opens and Tobias steps out with Marcus and Caleb behind him, almost unnoticed. Almost. Except I notice him, because I've trained myself to notice him. Tobias, get a hold of your 16-year-old girlfriend, okay? She needs to chill out. Tobias squats down next to Tris, and he says in her ear, you were right, Tobias says quietly, balancing on the balls of his feet. Wait, this guy's got balls on his feet? Oh, and he's balancing on them? He smiles a little. I do know who you are. I just needed to be reminded. Okay, this is where I stopped reading. Then all the screens in the erudite lobby, at least those that weren't destroyed in the attack, flicker on, including a projector, very handy in the moment, including a projector positioned over the wall where Jeanine's portrait used to be. Oh, so Evelyn like shot it down to make way for the projector that will show you this message. Oh wait, but Evelyn doesn't know about this. She just happened to help out with the projector. Evelyn stops in the middle of her sentence and Tobias brings Tris up to her feet. What is this? Evelyn demands. This, he says, only to me. So Evelyn's asking him, what is this? And then he's turning to Tris and he's going, this is the information that will change everything. I'm actually pretty excited. Like after all this time, I get to actually have the payoff and I get to do it in front of the camera, which is nice because I'm always like explaining it afterwards. So you never get to see if I'm surprised or my genuine reaction. Okay. This is the information that will change everything. Tris's legs shake with relief and apprehension. Yay! You did it, I say. You did it, Tobias says. All I did was force Caleb to cooperate. I press into the distance between us until it is gone, crushing the secrets we have kept and the suspicions we have harbored. For good, I hope. And then I hear a voice. We pull apart and turn towards the wall, where a woman with short brown hair is projected. She sits at a metal desk with her hands folded, in a location I don't recognize. My name is Amanda Ritter. In this file, I will tell you only what you need to know. I am the leader of an organization fighting for justice and peace. This fight has become increasingly more important, and consequentially near impossible in the past few decades. That is all because of this. Okay, so is this a lady from like our world, you know, from like before the divergent world happened? Images flash across the wall, almost too fast for me to see. A man on his knees with a gun pressed to his forehead. The woman pointing it at him, her face emotionless. From a distance, a small person hanging by the neck from a telephone pole. A hole in the ground the size of a house, full of bodies. Come on, who else could make that hole in the ground except for a monster, dude? It's gotta be a monster. There are other images too, but they move faster, so I only get impressions of blood and bone and death and cruelty, empty faces, soulless eyes, terrified eyes. Just when I've had enough, when I feel like I am going to scream if I see any more, the woman reappears on the screen behind her desk. You do not remember any of that, she says, but if you are thinking these are the actions of a terrorist group or a tyrannical government regime, you are only partially correct. It's because of a monster. It's because of a monster. Half of the people in those pictures committing those terrible acts were your neighbors, your relatives, your coworkers. The battle we are fighting is not against a particular group. Come on, tell me it's against monsters. I mean, maybe I'm thinking of big, scary monsters. But does it count if it's like people, but they're monsters? Like a different species, like a hidden monster species? Or what if the previous generation, before the first generation, like Triss's grandparents or whatever, what if they're the original monsters that took over Chicago and killed everyone, and the people left were like their children, but they didn't tell any of them that they like destroyed, like they didn't tell them about what actually happened. So maybe this lady's like their mom. What? Okay, I'm gonna keep reading. I'm like almost done with the book. The battle we are fighting is not against a particular group. It is against human nature itself, or at least what it has begun. Can we stop with the codes? If this is going to be the thing that tells everyone, like, we're in a book, why are you saying that the crazy stuff so far is pictures that you're seeing? That doesn't help me very much when I'm reading a book, okay? I want to know exactly what it is. I want to know if there's monsters. I want to know now. Our struggle against violence and cruelty is only treating the symptoms of a disease, not curing it. You are the cure. In order to keep you safe, we devised a way for you to be separated from us, from our water supply, from our technology, from our societal structure. We have formed your society in a particular way in the hope that you will rediscover the moral sense most of us have lost. Over time, we hope that you will begin to change, as most of us cannot. Is this like a metaphor for Republicans and Democrats? The reason I'm leaving this footage for you is that so you will know when it's time to help us. You will know that it is time when there are many among you whose minds appear to be more flexible than the others. The name you should give those people is divergent. Once they become abundant among you, your leaders should give the command for amity to unlock the gate forever so that you may emerge from your isolation. Oh my God. It really is like divergent Jesus almost, or more so that the divergent are Jesus. Are the divergent meant to go and like fight? The information in this video is to be restricted to those in government only. You are to be a clean slate. But do not forget us. I am about to join your number, she says. Like the rest of you, I will voluntarily forget my name, my family, and my home. I will take on a new identity with false memories and a false history. But so that you know the information I have provided you with is accurate, I will tell you the name I am about to take is my own. Oh my God, who is it gonna be? Her smile broadens, and for a moment, I feel that I recognize her. My name will be Edith Pryor. And there is much I am happy to forget. It's your grandma! I mean, I had a feeling that they were the ones that initially came here, but I didn't know that they wiped their memories and gave them false memories. Now I gotta go back and read what they said about their grandparents in the past. The video stops. The projector glows blue against the wall. I clutch Tobias's hand, and there is a moment of silence like a withheld breath. Then the shouting begins. That's it, guys. We did it. Oh my God, I can't believe this is it. I like the ending, I guess. I think that in a few ways it rubbed me the wrong way because I do feel like it's explainable. From Marcus and Caleb's point of view, if it's this dire, I feel like you can explain it to her, you know? Maybe not Marcus, but Caleb at least. Someone's gotta just tell this girl what it is, if all of you guys know. It's not that hard to be like, listen, your grandparents were actually brought here from an outside world where there's zombies or monsters or something. I'm not ruling out that monsters may exist. I think they might be human-shaped monsters. If you made it to the end, I cannot believe that you're still watching. This video is like 3.5 hours long at least. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is a good idea, but I have a good feeling about it, you know? I think I definitely got a little bit sick of it by the end, but I'm happy we're here. Before I give my final thoughts on the book, I saw that the ebook version I have has 4 different deleted scenes. I thought that book was goddamn long enough. I'm glad she took out some stuff. Okay, so before I do my final thoughts for the book, let's take a moment in memoriam for the people that we lost during this journey we all took together. Cut to the music. In memoriam. Jeanine, stabbed in the stomach by a woman whispering George Woo in her ear. Max, stabbed by Lynn for some reason while he was under mind control. Fernando, riddled with bullets after his glasses fell out of his pocket. Lynn, I'm actually not sure what happened to her. Marlene, pancaked after falling several stories from a rooftop while under mind control. Shauna, shot in the back after Lynn stabbed Max for some reason. Eric, shot in the face after telling Tobias to shoot him in the face. Rest in peace to these we lost and whatever. I don't know. To just piggyback off of the memoriam, all 3 of our like sort of I don't want to say like shallow brunette women, but like Shauna, Marlene, Lynn, I kind of have bunched into like one because they're just, it's crazy that all 3 of them died. Shout out to, oh wait, I thought all 3 of them died. I forgot that Shauna was just in a wheelchair. Sorry if you commented that Shauna didn't actually die and then continued to watch the video for me to realize that she actually is a very well alive. Not well, she's in a wheelchair, paralyzed for the rest of her life. Damn, that sucks for Hector though. We got to give him some award for like most likely to die but didn't. I mean, he got under mind control and tried jumping off the roof, but Triss saved him. One of his sisters got shot in the back because the younger sister decided to stab some guy, and then that sister ended up dying for some unknown reason. I mean, this guy's life sucks, and his family is divergent-phobic, so this whole divergent Jesus arc that we're about to take, it's going to get weird for this family. I'm majorly interested in what this family is going to decide to do. Okay, other final thoughts. I enjoyed that V. Roth waited till the 2nd book to bring in and introduce all the leaders of each faction. I think what the first book did half well was like giving us characters that all felt more like people and not like background characters that we picked for the 2nd book. This book just felt like it was like, okay, who else did we talk about in the first book? Oh, that guy that strapped her into the zip line. Okay, let's give her a role. We'll make them into like a family. Then we got this guy and his older brother. I just didn't have time to connect with any of those characters. And then they like died before I had a chance to know them. And then it feels like Triss it's another one of those things where everyone in her life's dying around her. But it's like, listen, these people have not been in your life that long. I don't even know who these guys are. I don't know if I liked this more or less than Divergent. I'm gonna say I liked it less because I think it was just loaded with extra stuff that I don't think was necessary. I'm so interested to see what they do with the movie. I am excited to watch it and tell you guys what I think. Who knows if I'll get it out before the new year. But seriously, if you watch this long, thank you so much for watching this long. It's worth it to me all the time I have making it and everything. Not only because it's fun, but because I want to see how everyone else reacts to it. Over Thanksgiving, I talked to 2 different family members of mine that had like a huge divergent phase in their youth. And so it's interesting hearing about it from a perspective of someone who doesn't know anything that's about to happen. Can't wait to predict what they're going to do in the movie. You guys know my predictions for the next book. Fernando resurrected monsters. Okay, so on Goodreads, I gave Divergent, I think, a 2 out of 5. I mean, since Goodreads, I can't give half stars, I'm going to also give Insurgent 2 stars. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it and you haven't watched my Divergent videos, the one about the movie and the one about the book, Go watch those in preparation for the rest of my Divergent videos. Oh my god, for the people that stayed, I recently bought a book off of eBay that will be for a future video. It was a video I've wanted to make for a long time. Let me go get it. Don't spoil it for anyone else, but I'm very excited to talk about this book right here, baby. Thank you for watching. If you want to see everything I'm up to, I'm on Instagram as Nick is not green. I have a music project called Face Eater. I have a couple songs out. I'll put the music videos in the description. I may be taking a little bit of break from bad books. I'm gonna start reading some good books over winter break and hopefully, you know, take a beat. But I am very excited to see what ends up happening in Allegiant. I feel like a high school girl. I mean, specifically in that way, not in any other weird way. Anyways, okay, that's the end of the video. Bye.